But you closed down your both of them together then? Okay. Okay, good evening and welcome to the Costa Mesa City Council special meeting for Tuesday, March 24th, 2020. At this time, I'm going to read into the record a special statement. And in order to minimize the spread of the COVID-19 virus, Governor Newsom has issued executive orders that temporarily suspend requirements of the Brown Act, and as such, the Costa Mesa City Council chambers will be closed to the public effective immediately and until further notice. Some or all of the Costa Mesa City Council members may attend this meeting telephonically. Tonight, we have 5 members attending telephonically. Members of the public are strongly encouraged to observe the City Council meetings live on Costa Mesa TV, Spectrum Channel 3, and AT&T Uverse Channel 99, and online at youtube.com/Costa Mesa TV. Members of the public who wish to make a comment on a specific agenda item, please submit your comment via email to the city clerk at cityclerk@CostaMesaCA.gov. Comments will be accepted continuously during the meeting and will be read into the record up to the time limit of 3 minutes. Any portion of comment not read aloud due to time restrictions will still be included in the record. And after every item, I will go ahead and ask the city clerk to read the public comments. And she's going to remind me so I don't forget. In compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, if you need special assistance to participate in this meeting, please contact the city clerk at 714-754-5225. Notification at least 48 hours prior to the meeting will enable the city to make reasonable arrangements to ensure accessibility to this meeting. 28 CFR 35.102.35.104 ADA Title II. Language translation services are available for this meeting by calling 714-754-5225 at least 48 hours in advance. Habrá servicio de interpretación disponible para estas juntas llamado al 714-754-5225 por los menos con 48 horas de anticipación. I apologize for my poor Spanish-speaking skills, but I tried. The City of Costa Mesa thanks you in advance for taking all precautions to prevent spreading the COVID-19 virus. We are working on a system that will allow us to have maybe some different technology so that we could do video conferencing, and we hope that that will be online here very soon. So thank you for your patience with us. Okay, good evening, and can you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Please say with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Ms. Green, can we please have the roll?
Councilmember Chavez.
Here.
Councilmember Guinness. Councilmember Guinness.
Did we lose her?
Okay, let's see if she signs back on.
Okay.
Councilmember Mansour. Here. Councilmember Marr.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Well, I'm here, except I'm not able to, nothing's coming up on my YouTube for the video.
Okay, thank you. That means it's probably not coming up for others too, so we'll get that fixed. Thank you.
Mayor Foley,
Present.
Councilmember Guinness. Okay,
Okay,
we'll check back with her.
we'll check back with her and somebody will text her to see if she's having trouble. Okay. City Attorney, Ms. Barlow, closed session report, and did we have anything we need to add to the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. There's nothing to report from closed session, but we would ask you to bring on 2 items to this evening's agenda as having arisen after the posting of the agenda. The city manager would like to make a report to you tonight, and the Assistant Director of Emergency Services, Mr. Dempsey. So that is one item we'd like you to bring on. The other item is the removal of Tier 2 salary and benefit structure for communication officers and temporary suspension of the transparency policy related to the emergency. Again, we need a 4/5 vote for you to bring these items on the agenda.
Okay, I'll move to bring the items on the agenda. Is there a second?
Second, Reynolds.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Reynolds seconded the item. And we will have a voice vote. Screen. Councilmember Chavez, can we have your vote?
Yes. Yes.
Just the microphone, Brenda. Yes, we can barely hear you.
There we go. Councilmember Reynolds.
Yes.
This is weird. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Foley,
Yes.
motion carries 6-0.
Okay, and just to correct, it was Councilmember Reynolds, not Stevens. On the second.
Oh,
Okay. Okay. Any other report, Ms. Barlow? Okay. So at this time, we will turn this item over to the city manager for her report.
if you could.
Yes, I'm
let me
sorry.
Read the item first.
Okay.
Item number 1, adoption of urgency ordinance.
No, we're going to do the city manager report first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Excuse
okay.
me.
That's okay. Ms. Farrell Harrison? We're going to I think we're going to start with the fire chief.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Reynolds.
Oh, I just want to, it'd be great for these reports if we make sure that the YouTube's working. Do we know that that's working?
Can everybody who is on the call, can you all see the YouTube now? Just respond by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
John
great.
Stevens,
Thank you.
yes. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, I think everyone's good. I've gotten several communications telling us that it's okay. Okay. Chief Stefano is going to give us an update on our COVID-19 crisis situation.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you.
Is his microphone on? It does not appear to be.
No. We will.
Podium mic on. Okay, there we go.
We good?
Yep.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, tonight I'll just start off, and I know we're
Actually,
going to.
Mayor, may I? We have Councilmember Guinness on the line. She would very much like to participate. I don't think she has the correct telephone number for the dial-in, so if we could just allow for a couple of minutes for her
Okay,
to
yeah,
dial
let's
in.
just hold up for 1 minute while,
Absolutely.
we'll take a brief moment to sit here quietly while we're waiting for Councilmember Guinness to get online. We good? Okay. So we'll be able to hear the beep. So as soon as we hear a beep. Okay, Councilmember Guinness, are you online with us again?
Yeah, I had an email that had a different access code for the public
Okay,
session.
okay, we're good. We can hear you now, and we're just getting ready for the fire chief to give us a report, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Fire chief.
Right, Madam Mayor, members of the council, appreciate the opportunity tonight to kind of kick it off and give you an overview of where we're at relative to our response as a city for COVID, and then we'll pass it over to our EOC administrator and then police class, just so you get a comprehensive look. Essentially where we're at now, we've been in the planning stages over the course of the past few months, and we have all of the different pieces in place. We've got a unified command with the city manager, the police department, and the fire and rescue department. We have every member of every department involved in this EOC, Emergency Operations Center, set up. So we have all the pieces in play. The council's been directly engaged as well, so that's appreciated. As we look at the current status, it's obviously an international incident. For us locally here, we're working with our partners at the local level, the county-wide level, and communication through the state and federal level. On a daily basis, we all have conference calls, including yourselves, and so we're maintaining that information flow. Where we were when we started a few months ago, when this started to come up initially, the end of December, that's when we began the planning. We didn't have those collaboration pieces in play with those different levels of government. Where we're at today is a much different picture, and we're fortunate for that, and the partnerships have been incredible. We right now, in terms of the fire and rescue department, we've prepared our individuals, the personal protective equipment, all the preventive measures are at a level that exceed the actual recommendations, and that includes all of our public safety personnel here in the city of Costa Mesa. And so from the response perspective, we are well prepared for this incident. We're well prepared for any incident. And so as we look at it, it's more the concern now that we have is preparing for the surge that's going to hit our healthcare facilities, and it's going to hit all of the first responders, not only here locally, but throughout the entire region. And so as we look at that mechanism and we look for that surge that's about to come, what's most important from our perspective is that we do all come together and we focus on staying at home. There are different measures that are out there. We have been incrementally moving forward, not just here locally, but throughout the state. We've seen, and we have clear data that shows that we've got to take very aggressive measures at this point. We're going to get through this. There's no question. And everyone is engaged. Everyone is together in this. The community is together in this. We're going to get through it, but it's a matter of what the outcomes are going to be on the backside. And for us, the best outcomes are going to come if we get very aggressive with those measures. So the message for us today is we appreciate the majority of the community out there that is listening to the stay-at-home message, but we need to take a much more aggressive stance, and we need to make sure that everyone listens closely to truly stay at home. There's not a halfway. There's not a simple step. It's got to be full engagement, and it needs to be everyone lining that out to stay at home. In terms of our numbers, we've done a very good job here in terms of we've had individuals that have been exposed on different calls in terms of having contact, but our personal protective equipment that our first responders have had in place have served very well. The communication with the hospitals, the level that the hospitals are operating at right now, as an example, Hoag Hospital, they've put in measures now that when we have patients come off, they're ready at the door at a level that I haven't seen in quite a while. Every level of the healthcare triangle is in full swing. We're working closely with the county health officials. The county health officials in Orange County have, again, upped their game as well, and their communications with all of the different jurisdictions, keeping everyone on the same page. And that's been something that's been very beneficial. From the fire chief perspective, we are on a regular basis talking in terms of what different types of deployments we're looking at. From where we're at today to where we're going to be at in the weeks and months ahead, you will see some deployment structures for us that are much different, and it's due to just preparing for the surge capacity. So again, we are well prepared here locally in Costa Mesa. We're well prepared in the region and with our partners outside of the county. It really comes down to that surge piece, and the biggest component now, in addition to all of the preventative measures that we've asked for, not only of our personnel, but the community, the washing hands, the social distancing, we must take a much more aggressive stance at staying at home and listening. There is no halfway. Right now, it's all or none. So again, we will get through this. We'll get through it together, but we need to have the best possible outcome on the backside.
Thank you.
And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our EOC manager, Jason Dempsey.
Thank you so much, Chief.
Madam Mayor, good evening.
Good
City
evening.
Council. So what the chief's referring to as far as stay at home and why it's so important is in recent days, weeks, and months even, we've learned more and more about COVID-19. Initially, we were told that it was an affliction that mostly threatened our elderly and those with compromised health. And now we're starting to see more and more instances where younger people are getting it. We just had our first death here in Southern California of a child, just north of us in Los Angeles. So it hits close to home. Here in Orange County, we just had a casualty this afternoon as well, a gentleman in his 70s. So it's coming closer and closer to home, and it's something that we need to be aware of. So when we look at the quantitative data and we examine what's available to us, the information that's out there regarding the growth of this, of COVID-19 in Italy and how it's slowly increased to the point where it's virtually exponential in its progress as it increases in number of cases and increases in deaths. And then we compare that to what's taking place in Spain, and we bring it closer to home and we set that next to New York. There's an expectation out there right now at the federal level and at the state level throughout the public health and emergency management specialties that this is going to be a pretty big deal. One of the sources of information that we're using to compile this data and analyze it in a quantitative and logical manner is COVID Act Now. And what this is a site that breaks down a variety of data using different modeling information, and it looks at what takes place if a community here in the United States does nothing, if they take limited action, if they do social distancing, or if they shelter in place. And in each one of those instances, there are a variety of different possibilities that can take place. But regardless, the threat to our healthcare system is high. One of the things we're looking at that's a challenge is the people that are affected by this and are impacted, the casualties we sustain throughout the state are not just going to be because people died from COVID-19. It's actually going to be because the healthcare system is overwhelmed addressing people that are infected, that they're going to be unable to take care of the person that shows up after a vehicle accident, or someone that has a heart attack, or someone that has some other condition that under normal circumstances, they will be able to get that higher level of care and be out of the hospital in a reasonable amount of time. Now, all of those healthcare workers are going to be focused on taking care of these people with COVID-19. One of the other challenges that we're looking at when we look at these cases in Italy and in Spain and in New York, but particularly in Italy, is the rationing of healthcare. So one thing that happens in any instance when you have a finite supply system or resources is triage. And triage is where we allocate and prioritize how those healthcare resources are used and what the priority is for care. In Italy, there's now actually known and documented instances where people of a particular age are not even going to be seen by a doctor at all. And people that are already in the healthcare system that may even be on ventilators and perhaps are even have a reasonable rate of survivability are removed from those ventilators, and those systems are turned over to someone else that the healthcare workers believe may have a greater chance of survival. So that's something we're already seeing in Italy. And when we think about the healthcare surge that's going to happen here in the United States, that it's expected, that we have a limited number of bed spaces, of ventilators available to us, that's something that will happen if people do not stay at home. So as COVID-19 infections continue to spread, the number of cases that we're seeing throughout the state are a reflection of people that were infected weeks ago. That means the number is far greater than what we see every day, far greater. And we won't know for a couple more weeks what that really is. And so the healthcare system is bracing for impact right now. We're seeing some of the concern out in the streets as people realize it's a problem. And some people are reacting by buying up a bunch of things at stores. Some people are reacting in other ways. A lot of people are impacted financially and are losing their employment. All of these are terrible situations, but what I would say is no matter what, if they don't stay at home, then they're not going to be able to take care of their families if they're sick or they find themselves in that healthcare system that's experiencing a major surge. So my recommendation is that we continue to heed the recommendations that are provided to us by the healthcare community and be vigilant about only going out for what we need to do in terms of essential activities. There's no need to go outside if we're gonna needlessly expose ourselves or our families. It's conceivable that someone in this room could have it and go on for 2 weeks and not even know it and share that virus with all the other people that they surround themselves with and eventually take that home to their families and expose them as well. And they wouldn't know for weeks, and it's happening. And that's what we call community spread. And that's what we're trying to avoid by having people stay at home. So that's pretty much all I have to say regarding this, other than it's not the end of the world, but it is something that we need to take very seriously now that we realize that it can affect people of all ages, and our healthcare system is going to be impacted dramatically. And again, even if you or I are not, if we don't get serious symptoms or signs from this, the healthcare system being overwhelmed may end up not being able to serve us in the way that we need it to in other forms of emergency care.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dempsey, and thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you. Okay, Chief Glass, just don't touch the microphone.
I will not. Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'd just like to follow up the Fire Chief as well as Emergency Service Administrator Dempsey. Public safety is prepared for this event and going on in the community. And this community should be proud of the steps we as a city have taken with your support, city manager's leadership. Been impressed myself, and this is an event that none of us have ever experienced, and we are all stepping up to the challenge. First responders are prepared. Personal protective equipment is issued out to those individuals. In regards to the law enforcement side of it, besides the EOC and our joint unified command with fire and city manager's office, we are making constant evaluation of the measures being taken on law enforcement, how officers out there on every day contacting individuals are engaging. We've changed different policy procedures to protect our first responders out there, as well as the community, and address those needs. There is still a strong demand by the community from the police department that we are addressing, but I'm sure they are seeing our different protocols, taking more reports online. Online reporting is being promoted on a regular basis, but we are out there engaged in addressing those calls. What I want to address and emphasize to the community is that we do need their support and participation in following the orders out there. We have taken a very approach of educating the community, responding to calls. We are getting individuals who are calling in regards to social gathering concerns, individuals they believe who are not following the orders of the governor as well as the Orange County Health Officer. We are addressing those because that is our responsibility. We are educating the community, educating the people we come in contact. We are getting strong compliance from the community when we have contact them out there, and I've been really happy to report that, and that we are seeing that across the board. But there is a concern as this progresses, and depending on the duration of it, that could potentially change. With that, we will continue to work with the community, educate them, but we are also in the position where at one point we could be in positions, if individuals were not compliant, that we would have to take enforcement actions for the safety of the Costa Mesa community and do our part to help deter contamination and other people being exposed. And we are in that position. It's not that approach right now, but we are seeing that taken by other law enforcement agencies throughout the state who are not getting compliance and who are not getting any resolve out there. So I just really want to emphasize that to this group as well as to the community out there that we appreciate their compliance, heed the warning of the orders, follow those orders, and don't put us in a position where we have to go for the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all of you and all the hard work that you're doing for us. City Manager Farrell Harrison, did you have some additional report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. As you can imagine, we've been dealing with a very rapidly evolving public health crisis. The new information and the guidance that we're getting from every level of government continues to change as often as by the hour. On a positive note, we are all working together very closely with our federal, state, county partners at every level of government to make sure that we have the best response available to our community and that we're helping to combat the spread of COVID-19. It's important to mention that at this point, we're about halfway through the 15 days to slow the spread. That is a presidential initiative nationally for us to all do our part, for us to stay at home, and to only go out for essential activities only. This is imperative because of the potential impact that this could have not only on our health and well-being and our safety, but on those that are more vulnerable than we are. We want to make sure that our hospital and our medical care systems aren't overwhelmed to the point of not being able to address our critical needs. We have had increasing cooperation at every level of government. We're in constant communication, as has been mentioned by our fire chief and also our Chief Glass and Jason Dempsey, our emergency services coordinator. That is a stark difference from where we were just a few weeks ago as it related to COVID-19. And so I can tell you that I am very pleased and very honored to be part of a national network of government officials at every level that are really doing their best to try to help respond to this crisis. On just 2 days ago, the president approved the governor's request for a major disaster declaration that will enable us to get additional funding, which is great. In anticipation of that, also the government has, and the president has, initiated the National Guard in 3 specific states. That's California, New York, and Washington. We're one of the 3 states that are having increased cases of COVID-19. And unfortunately today, we were notified that in Orange County, we've had our first death of COVID-19, and it's someone, it's a male patient that was in his 70s. So we cannot stress enough the importance of making sure that you're staying at home and you're practicing social distance, which is 6 feet apart, and doing everything that your state and local leaders and federal leaders are telling you is the best guidance scientifically to protect you and your loved ones from the disease. We've activated our emergency operations center here. We're at level 2 of operation, and we continue to work with all of our partners to make sure that we're getting all of the personal protective equipment and other things that we need to be able to handle the response. I did want to mention something very important to our council, which is that all levels of government and every public health care agency is starting to advance plan for a potential surge in patients and in the number of people who will need to be helped by our hospital and medical care system. It is anticipated that in just a few weeks, we will be about 50,000 beds short of what is needed throughout the state of California in order to be able to help all of those that are in need, either related to COVID-19 or other illnesses that people may have. Because of that, now the state and the federal government, they are working with many states together, but also looking within California to determine what are other sites that can be used to address this very critical shortage in hospital beds. And so throughout the country, the Federal Emergency Management Agency is working with state and local governments to identify potential sites where this surge capacity could be addressed. And this is a very important part of the healthcare system and the continuum that needs to be available to make sure that all the resources are being brought to bear to help anyone that becomes inflicted with the disease or who may be displaced from their home-based hospital because there is a need to refocus efforts to address COVID-19. Within the state of California, there are 30 sites that are being considered for additional capacity. Some are convention centers or other large venues. It is our understanding that within California, 8 to 10 sites in the Southern California region are also being considered. And as you know, state surplus properties are often on the table when it comes to looking at additional ways to be able to address either public health, emergency, or other urgent needs that the state of California has. We have Fairview Developmental Center here in our city, and it is a site that has been identified as a surplus property for the state. It is our understanding that that site may possibly be assessed even as early as this week by the Army Corps of Engineers for the purpose of surge planning for either COVID-19 or other patients that may need care. And so we are watching that situation. And again, these events are rapidly evolving. It is important for us to have all together be in response to this, all on the same page. That is very, very important. And so we have been in contact with federal officials, Congressman Harley Ruta's office, who reached out to us today to give us the advance notice that as early as this week we could have, and perhaps even as early as tomorrow, the Army Corps of Engineers may be on site to assess Fairview Developmental Center as a potential site for surge planning purposes. Again, this is an assessment. No final position has been taken at this time. It could be for patients that need to be displaced in order for the hospital to focus on the pandemic, or it can be for a number of different reasons. But in terms of the 50,000 bed shortage, we want to make sure that we have the resources that we need to be able to address the needs of Orange County, our residents, our Costa Mesa residents, and all Californians. And so we are in a very good place with the collaboration, the sharing of information, the planning, all of the preparation at every single level of government. I can tell you that we are all very much in this together, and we have been receiving great cooperation from every different entity, including the County Public Health Agency, the federal government, CDC, FEMA, every single agency that's been involved in the response. So I'm happy about the progression that's taken place in the last several weeks. It's a much more comprehensive, robust, and collaborative approach to dealing with the pandemic, which is the right thing. And so we are standing ready and prepared to do whatever it takes to help reduce the transmission of the disease. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor. But again, stay home.
Thank you. Thank you. And in case you didn't get the message that we were trying to convey, please stay home. Please stay home. It's very important. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So we have we have now 6 special items on our agenda for tonight. City Clerk, will you please read the first title?
This is adoption of urgency ordinance entitled, An Urgency Ordinance of the City of Costa Mesa, California, establishing a temporary suspension of Costa Mesa Municipal Code Section 13-174 as to short-term occupancy motels which are restricted to allowing stays of no longer than 30 consecutive days due to the impacts of the coronavirus disease, declaring the ordinance be an emergency measure to take effect immediately upon adoption. Presentation by Ms. Farrell Harrison, City Manager.
Thank you. Ms. Farrell Harrison.
Thank you. The 30-day stay, are we on the 30-day stay item?
Yes.
Is basically something that we're bringing forward in a suite of items here this evening for you to consider to give the community some relief and to give our residents some relief during this very difficult time. We do have in our ordinance currently a maximum stay limit of 30 days, given that the situation is so rapidly evolving and that individuals or families may need additional protection to be able to either isolate from their families or to just be able to stay in motels for longer. We're bringing forward a recommendation to revise the ordinance and to lift that cap on the 30-day maximum for motel stays during the duration of this emergency.
Okay. Given the technology, what we're going to do tonight so that it's easy and everyone can be heard is we're going to just go down the row of council members, and I will ask at this time if anyone has any questions, and I'll start with Councilmember Guinness.
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynolds?
No questions.
Councilmember Chavez?
None, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Mar?
No.
Councilmember Mansour? Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Real quick question. So
this 30-day ordinance was the subject of prior litigation. And I was wondering that as I look at the ordinance itself as drafted, it says that it would be in effect until cessation of the emergency, which is not entirely clear to me. Would there be any problem with us changing that and saying that the basically the suspension of the ordinance would be in effect until further act of the council to repeal, amend, or reinstate the ordinance? Any problem with that? Because I'm considering including that in the motion.
Okay. City Attorney Barlow.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The one concern that I would have is that we were careful to structure this specifically for the emergency because we didn't want to create any vested rights for short-stay motels to convert to long-stay motels on a permanent basis. What I would prefer, rather than modifying the urgency ordinance, is directing staff, I know that we're working on it, but directing staff to take this item to the Planning Commission as soon as possible for review so that we can consider its long-term implications for the city.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, did you have anything further? Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, any further comment or question regarding that response? Are you there? Okay, I'm going to move to Councilmember Guinness. Councilmember Guinness, did you have any comment or question regarding that response by Ms. Barlow?
No, I don't.
Councilmember Reynolds, any?
No.
Councilmember Chavez?
No.
Councilmember Mar?
No.
Councilmember Mansour?
Ms. Barlow, just to make sure I understand Mr. Stevens' question, would what he said be any different than saying, and I'm fine with this change when we vote on it, but if we said until the emergency is over, or 3 months from now, or 6 months from now, in other words, add a date specific, whichever comes first, can we, just to make sure that it does come back, is that a problem?
Ms. Barlow?
It's going to come back.
Okay.
We're committed by terms of a settlement agreement to revisit this issue, and staff has been working on it. The only reason we haven't gotten it to the Planning Commission by now is because of the state of emergency that we've been dealing with essentially for the last 2 months. So we thought that the duration of the emergency would be sufficient. If it looks like we need to extend it longer than that, we can certainly bring it back to you.
Okay, then one more quick clarification. Can you define emergency is over? Is that when the governor says it's over, when we say it's over? What is the definition of emergency is over?
When the city council declares that the emergency in the city of Costa Mesa is over.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, are you back on the line?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any follow-up with regard to that response by Ms. Barlow?
No.
Okay.
I was actually trying to speak and I was muting myself.
Okay. All right. There is now the time for the public comment. If there has been any public comment emailed to us, Ms. Green, could you read those public comments, please?
None on this item.
Okay. I will close the public comment. And council, is there a motion? Council.
John, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
To approve the staff recommendation with the direction to have staff and the Planning Commission look into this and bring it back to the council.
Okay. Motion by Stevens, second by Mansour. Okay. And we'll do a voice vote. Ms. Green?
Councilmember Reynolds?
Yes.
Councilmember Mar?
Yes.
Councilmember Mansour? Councilmember Guinness?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Foley?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. At this time, we will move to item number 2.
Thank you. This item is change order number 3, South Coast Emergency Vehicle Service. Presentation by Ms. Farrell Harrison, City Manager.
Ms. Farrell Harrison?
Thank you. This change order is before you this evening in order to allow for us to be able to repair our critical fire apparatus. So we're requesting a change order in the amount of $25,000 to make sure that we have sufficient funding to address any unmet needs that may arise during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay. At this time, I will go through the roll to ask if there are any questions. Councilmember Guinness?
Nope.
Councilmember Reynolds?
No.
Councilmember Chavez?
Nope.
Councilmember Mar?
No.
Councilmember Mansour? Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
No.
And I have no questions. We'll open this item up for public comment. The city clerk, hold on for a minute. I don't know what happened. Oh. I don't blame you. Yes, thank you. Thank you for being diligent about our hygiene here. Everyone needs to be protected. We just need to know if there's public comments on item number 2.
No, there is none.
Okay, no comments. I will close this item. Council, okay, so I'm going to call on Councilmember Mansour for the motion, but I think for the balance of the agenda, if you could just request the floor, and then I'll call on you to make your motion. Is there a second?
And I'll
Reynolds,
second it.
yeah.
Okay, second by Chavez. Call for the question by voice vote.
Councilmember Reynolds?
Yes.
Councilmember Mar?
Yes.
Councilmember Mansour? Councilmember Guinness?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Foley?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, we will now move to item number 3. City Clerk, can you read the item?
Thank you. Adopt resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Costa Mesa, California, ratifying Regulation Number 1 issued by the City Manager as direction of emergency services to close all city parks pursuant to Proclamation Number 20-01 declaring the existence of a local emergency." Presentation by Ms. Farrell Harrison, City Manager.
Ms. Farrell Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll open the item, and then we have Cynthia D'Agosta here to also respond to any questions that you may have. But basically, in following step with the governor's stay-at-home order and the ramping up of efforts to prevent the spread of the transmission of COVID-19, I did issue an order yesterday closing all city parks and open spaces, and I ask that you please support that action this evening. I will tell you that this is not an action that we entered into lightly as staff. It was a subject of conversation for most of the day yesterday, after a lot of consultation with our fire chief, our emergency manager, Yvette Aguilar, who's our interim Parks and Community Services Director, and then also Cynthia is here to respond to questions as well. We felt very strongly, and we're all unified as your staff, to bring forward this item for consideration during the weekend, not just in Costa Mesa, but in neighboring cities, and it made national news. A lot of residents and families were out enjoying the outdoors. However, we did not see enough social distancing. And we also saw a lot of gatherings of people which have been banned in the interest of being as aggressive as possible as we can to flatten the curve, to disincentivize gatherings, and to make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep the community safe. We're bringing forth this ratification for you tonight. And so, Cynthia, did you have any additional comments?
Ms. D'Agosta?
I would like to say that Ms. Aguilar is on the phone
okay,
as well.
thank you.
Yes, and it may be counterintuitive that the Parks Department is bringing forward this motion as we are in the business of fun and out of doors, but as the city manager has said, in all caution and the observance that we've made over the last few days, and our slides do illustrate that if you want to use them. People are not exercising as much of the social distancing as we would expect out of the motions that have come from the state and the federal and the local governments. And so in all due caution, we see that it's necessary to encourage people by closing the parks to stay home, as we've heard tonight.
Okay. Did we have some slides that we
We do.
wanted to show? Okay.
Go ahead, Barry.
Mr. Curtis?
Go ahead, next one. So on Friday, March 20th, the governor had issued the stay-at-home order, and staff observed on that day, more than 400 vehicles at the Costa Mesa Golf Course. These are some of the illustrations of the golfers observing riding in carts together, gathering in place, and not practicing social distancing. Next, please. At Tanager Park, after the issuance of the city's emergency proclamation yesterday, the park visitors were noted at various parks. We've had our staff out there documenting this so that we know how to react to it. Tanager Park, where the equipment, as you can see here, both the playgrounds and the ball fields are being used consistently. Go ahead, Barry. Thank you. And then at Balearic Park, again, it's the observations of the basketball, so the amenities within the parks, which are continuing to be used in a group fashion. The skate part, actually, we closed that on March 17th, but since the closure, we have had up to 40 skaters in the park at a time, and we have had the gates and the locks and chains broken. Next, please. The dog park until today was left open, but again, what we're observing is that there is not the social distancing and the need for the care within that, so we have closed that as of today as well. Go ahead, Barry. Thank you. And then at Fairview Park, of course, we always have the groups gathering, and it has not slowed. And then the Bluff Trail on the left there that we did last winter, we did the emergency repair on. This is partially due to the rain, but you can see in the middle slide that the destruction of that trail is because of the increased use. And I think what we're observing again is that the cities and jurisdictions and even the state beaches around us, the parking lots are being closed, and we are beginning to feel the effect of people not being able to access those as well. Next, please. And then the other various parks, again, the playgrounds, the ball fields, these are all within the last 3 days. Again, the bottom right is at Fairview Park, the gathering impromptu soccer games. Go ahead, Barry, I'm sorry. The further observations, we've been working with the park rangers, and we have our own ambassadors, which we've been putting on to monitor them. The larger parks were at capacity in their respective parking lots, all of them. We actually even observed that at Fairview Park, we have people parking at Estancia and walking over. So we're seeing overload at nearby parks as well. They were all at points of capacity over the weekend. Above normal patrons. Contact sports were being played, as I've mentioned, and the open spaces are utilized for all of these activities. The boot camps is something that, again, it continues, but you would think after the notices that people have gotten, we wouldn't have that happening right now, but it continues. Thank you, Barry. Further observations, these are numbers. So Saturday, we started counting the numbers of the people at the park. On Saturday, the number was 456, Sunday, 359, and these are on cloudy, rainy days. This is not our sunshiny day. Monday, yesterday, there were at least 400 people out, and then today, a couple of times again, 270, and then later in the day, 325. Something I do want to bring up, we're observing additional RVs in the parking lots because, again, RV lots, even the Fairplex across the street, they have closed and I guess evicted. I'm not sure what the right word is to use, but people cannot stay in those RV parks any longer, so we're seeing them in our parking lots that we have for our parks as well. Restroom facilities, overload on the trails, the trash, all of that, at a time when we have reduced staff. And so we're running into a complication there as well. I think I've stated all of that. Thank you. So based on the observations, we're making the recommendation that the City Council ratify the resolution to close our parks.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Ms. Aguilar, I know you're on the line. Did you have anything that you would like to add?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Yes, I just wanted to mention as well that we had considered some kind of a phased approach closing park amenities. But after just further observation and feedback that we received both from park rangers and our staff, like Mr. Augusta mentioned, we did see that a lot of the open spaces that didn't have amenities in our parks were utilized for gatherings and the type of activities that encourage contact, like flag football, soccer, and some of those areas. And so while considering that, we did, like I said, take that into serious consideration because this is a hard decision to make. But we think it's important, and we understand that the health and safety of our community is first and foremost, and so that is why we are taking this conservative approach. But with that, we also recognize that there is a need to keep people active and engaged. So we will be rolling out some virtual programming in the coming days, in the next week or two as well, to encourage social engagement virtually, and then working with our contract instructors to see if they have the ability to do some kind of like online yoga or just different types of activities online. So I just thought that was important to mention as well.
Thank you. That's an excellent idea. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. D'Augusto, for the excellent report. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will go through the roll and same format as before. Councilmember Guinness, did you have any questions or comments?
Yes. I have a question about people who would just be traversing a park. For example, Smallwood Park, you walk through from Corsica to the Spice Streets on the walkway there. It keeps you from having to go around, or accessing the bike trail via Moon Park, where you're in there just a few seconds as you either ride your bike through or walk through. Would that be okay?
Ms. D'Augusto?
Yvette, do you want to take that?
Ms. Aguilar?
Sure, I'm here. Councilmember Guinness, we have excluded areas of the perimeter that would, the perimeter of the park would be accessible to the public, but not through the park. We think that's important because what happens is we want to make sure that there is visibility within the park to be able to potentially enforce or just educate the public. So accessing different areas through the perimeter or even the sidewalks of the park are okay, but this would limit access or not provide any access through a park.
Because both of those instances, you actually walk through the park. It's not a perimeter walk, but it does provide an important link that otherwise you would have to walk all the way around the block.
Again, if I may.
Especially for people to access the bike trail. That's the only way to get under the 405 freeway via a bicycle.
Well, we're supposed to be staying home. Ms. D'Augusto?
That was the point I was going to make. I think our objective here is to try and encourage.
I know, but I'm not going anywhere on my bicycle, but I'm thinking of all these kids who are home and their moms are going stir crazy.
Okay, I'm a mom. My kid is home, okay? Yes, Ms. D'Augusto.
That was the point I wanted to raise. This is very difficult for us to do, but I think that the observations we're making is that people aren't doing the recommendations that we're making and that are coming from the federal and the state and the county governments, and so we need to be as aggressive with this as we are with our other actions that the city is taking to get people to understand that the message is to stay at home right now.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize, Councilmember Guinness, for responding. I should have waited my turn. I'm just passionate about this issue.
We have a loudmouth dog. So okay. I'll let you go on to the next person.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Reynolds.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. D'Augusta and Aguilar for the report. I appreciate you both talking about how difficult a decision this is. I've really, really, really wrestled with this, and I know we had a long conversation about this because of what we're also taking away from the public at a time of immense stress. A couple of questions about the proposal here. One is time frame. What is the recommendation on time frame? Is this an indefinite closure? Or is it a the 2-week sort of shutdown? Can you clarify your recommendation there?
Ms. Farrell Harrison?
Yeah, it's during the duration of the emergency.
Okay. And then can you talk about a couple other things that we didn't have at the parks this weekend was signage and enforcement, which I do think would have gone a long way. Can we talk about what plans we have for that during this period?
Thank you, Ms. DeGassa.
Sure. We are actively working on the signage with our maintenance department right now, and we will have them ready as of tomorrow morning to put up through all our parks. The enforcement, I would refer to the chief for that.
Chief Glass, or I'm not sure which chief. Yeah. Chief Glass.
And the question was, ma'am?
Enforcement, and just don't touch the, I know, you guys, it's such a habit.
So enforcement in regards to
Okay.
parks, as I mentioned earlier, we are going out there educating, trying to promote compliance with individuals, and that is working. If this step, we'd have to post signs, we could follow those sign ordinances that could be enforced, plus we also have the government code and health and safety code that are applicable to the governor's order as well as the Orange County Health Officer's order.
Okay, Ms. Farrell Harrison?
Yes, and in terms of signs, we will put up signs, but I have to say that I've been looking at what's been happening in other cities that had a softer approach, that had the approach of just kind of siphoning off the playground equipment or taking down basketball nets. And they still had signs that said, please practice social distancing with visual cues and everything. And they still suffer the same issues of there's still gatherings. And so I think for consistency's sake, and for consistent messaging and to be clear about our message to the public about stay at home, to be as safe as possible, as much as possible, and come out for essential activities only, then I think it's imperative that we shut down the parks completely, because the experiment of kind of easing our way into it or having a slightly modified approach where a portion of the park is open for just passive recreation, that's not working.
Thank you. Okay, Councilman Reynolds, did you have any other comments or questions?
Yeah, where so I'm always trying to think of the then the impacts here. So there are a number of people who will have their daily dog walk through their park, right? These are things that we can't necessarily stop. Not everyone has a front yard or a backyard to let their dog play, for example. So what I'm concerned in situations where people are now sort of limited to our streets or sidewalks, and we don't necessarily have sidewalks everywhere. In where we do have sidewalks, they're 4 feet wide. You're going to be some crowding there. I'd like us to keep an eye on that. I've been on a number of walk audits recently, and there are places where people are forced to do their walks in the street. So I'm just concerned that taking away the parks as resources puts more people walking in the streets and into potentially dangerous situations with vehicle traffic. So I'd like us to keep an eye on that and consider slowing traffic. Maybe with those sort of digital sign displays that we have. I think that's going to be something we need to keep a close eye on. And I appreciate the comments about the alternatives with the virtual programming. I know we had brainstormed a few ideas on sort of alternative recreation opportunities to keep people's sort of social connection and mental health through this process. And would appreciate hearing either tonight or in the next few days some ideas for like that for people who don't have access to internet. So if you have those now, that'd be great. Otherwise, I think that's a really important consideration. Thank you.
Ms. Aguilar, did you have anything that you could respond on that one, or do you need more time?
We'll explore. We've been partnering with other cities, and we're on getting emails all the time and in communication, sharing ideas. So that's definitely something that we can explore. And we're very well aware that not everybody has access to online resources, but we can look and explore to see what we could do about that.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Councilmember Reynolds?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Chavez?
No questions.
Okay, Councilmember Mar?
Yeah, double down on the city manager's comments just now. We are literally doing everything as we can as a city right now to make sure people stay home. In some cases, that means entire people's livelihoods have been put on hold or effectively pretty much damaged as we tell everyone to stay home, not use local businesses, not go out to eat. It would be incredibly hypocritical for us to say it's okay as long as you're in a park. And so we need to be we need to stick to our guns and be as stringent as possible on these rules across every facet of our city, or we're doing a disservice to the community. So, we received some emails on this that I'm sure we're going to talk about here in a second that are, say this is draconian. I think for now, as long as we're talking about lives and the residents of Costa Mesa and trying to keep them as safe as possible, I'm okay with being draconian. So thank you so much for the work that you've done on this, Cynthia and Yvette. I know you put in hours over the last couple of days making sure we got that data, because I was concerned about it just being a park or two and closing down all of it because of it. So thank you for that. And obviously, I'll be supporting any other ideas that the city manager brings forward that continue to limit the spread and encourage people to stay home.
Thank you. Councilmember Mansour.
Thank you. So I appreciate all the comments. And I take this issue very seriously. My mom is 83 years old, and I have 4 small kids at home. But that being said, I got the emails too from people in the community, and I appreciate them. My observation on Saturday and Sunday being at Fairview Park this is so weird looking, not that the 3 staff members don't count, but it's weird looking in our audience here and nobody's here, and I'm trying to talk to the audience, but it's very awkward here. It's like a ghost town. And so we're all feeling the effects of this. But anyways, my observation at Fairview Park, we were there with our kids. Our kids have been boxed up like everyone else's. And, we were there for about 3 hours on Saturday and 3 hours on Sunday. And so we had plenty of time to observe and see what was going on. We were by ourselves, just our family, the same as if we were at home, except we were at the park. We weren't out and around with a bunch of people. It was my observation that most people were keeping their distance. People, the longer this goes on, the more people are going to need a place to unwind. It's just going to get more difficult. In my opinion, we could post signs. We could make announcements. Hey, walking through the park or whatever is fine, but hey, if there's group play, please break it up, and or play on equipment. Please don't do that. So my question. Well, I have a couple questions. What about a single person riding a bike, just going through the park by themselves? To me, I don't see a problem with that. If maybe they live by themselves, or maybe they're trying to access through Fairview Park to the River Trail. Whereas Councilmember Guinness mentioned Moon Park, you have to go through that to get to the River Trail, to access the River Trail. And that is such a short, you'd be on your bike 2 seconds and you'd be on the River Trail going through Moon Park, by yourself. I don't see a problem with that. So it seems to me that this is more a blanket approach versus more reasonable approach where we could allow some discretion. As far as the golf course, maybe we have to change the rules a little bit. Maybe only 1 player or 2 player per cart or something, and no groups of 4. But allow people to get out and exercise a little bit, even if it means they have to play a little bit more separate. I think that's it. So I do have concerns, and that's it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Yes. I have a question for the city manager, and I'd like to give some credit to Chairman of the Planning Commission, Byron DeErico, who just informed me that as of 5:51 today, the county closed beaches and parks in general, trailheads, everything of that nature. But they do have a carve-out, and the carve-out reads, passive walk-through, pedestrian cycling, and cycling is permitted. So my question to the city manager is, if the city of Costa Mesa, like the county of Orange, carved out passive walk-through, pedestrian, and cycling from the park closure and closed the parks for all other purposes, would that be sufficient to keep our community safe or does the staff think that we have to bar all passive walk-through, pedestrian and cycling activity and take a stricter approach than the county on that in order to keep our community safe?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I mean, obviously, this is the policy decision that we're deliberating right now, and there are other jurisdictions that have used that approach. It's been our experience, just from observing, that one point of leeway, just that flexibility, if you will, or just that allowance, creates more opportunities for gathering. And so, as people we're built to be in communion with others, and it's very hard for people to make those decisions and really stick to them and follow them. And I think what we're finding is that the most successful models are the ones that are very clear and specific and direct, and it's closed. And so I think it becomes subject to interpretation. Are two people in on bikes okay as long as they're 6 feet apart? Are a group of 6 kids, which we did observe, if they are all 6 feet apart, is that okay? But what if they all stop to just chat and talk halfway through their bike ride? And so I think in this situation, when we're dealing with a virus that we can't see, it is pervasive, it can be deadly, it is spreading, and we have a very limited amount of time to flatten the curve, it's staff's opinion that we have to draw a hard line here. And hopefully, in taking these aggressive steps, we'll be in a much better place weeks from now, where we can reopen the parks and then we can get back to our normal quality of life. But in the short run, in order to protect as many lives as possible, we're gonna have to make some difficult decisions. We're gonna have to be uncomfortable. I'm sympathetic. I have 3 teenage boys, and they have been cooped up in the house for 10 days. It's very, very difficult to be dealing with something like this. This was a really tough decision. I have to say, in all my years, this has been one of the most difficult things I've ever brought to a council. But we believe that out of an abundance of caution, in an effort to be consistent in our messaging and to stress that this is serious, we really want for families and just our residents to stay at home, except for essential activities only. And so I'll turn it over to any of the chiefs if they'd like to chime in, but that's pretty much staff's direction on this.
Chief Glass?
So in regards to this, any law, as the law enforcement agency for this city, we have discretion. And I think the city has to trust that we are going to use that discretion out there based on the matter. We're not going out there, and we would not be going out there to enforce on an individual riding through. But now say you have individuals on a bicycle and just riding around and spinning around there, and they say, well, I was just riding through. So having a more restrictive closure where we have that discretion to enforce if we had to is better for us. We're talking right now, our consideration of how people are out there, but we don't want to be coming back next week to elevate now and eliminate that piece. It's better to have this with the discretion that we have for enforcement. Again, we are not out there trying to give tickets out. That is not the direction of our organization right now. Our focus is distancing, promoting deterrence and measures out there to help fight this, as well as protecting our own staff, and being able to provide those priority calls in those emergency situations right now. We are practicing our own social distancing, but it's better to have the tool with the discretion opposed to not having it.
Thank you. Chief Stefano?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I know it's all been said. I think we're at the point now where we've done the incremental step. It's been measured. We've watched it. I can tell you, talking for my colleagues up north, which is the epicenter for California, Sonoma County, they're all closed. Beaches, parks closed. San Diego, beaches, parks closed. So we could go incremental and try to find these little navigation points to do, but we're at a critical time now. And like I said, we're going to get through it. It's about the outcomes we want. And we now have in our power, this body has the ability to say the time is now. And that's what we collectively, that's where we're at collectively. We're unified in the message. So again, I know ultimately you need to make that decision. We all have children. We all have families. We get it. It's an inconvenience, but it's a short-term inconvenience for a long-term win. And so that's really the message. We are clear on our message, and we just want it to be handled the best way it could. And so with that, we highly recommend that we move forward with this as it is, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay, hold on one second. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, what we're going to do is we're going to go down the roll call just because it becomes too hard to manage with everybody on the phone call. Ms. D'Agosta, thank you. I know. Chief Stefano has a habit of holding the microphone, so now you can't touch it after he talks.
It's okay.
Okay. So did you have anything else you wanted to add before I open it up for further questions by the council?
No.
Okay. I'll just go reverse order since Mayor Pro Tem Stevens wanted to ask a question. Mayor Pro Tem?
I just have a follow-up question, and I don't really need everybody to answer it, but they're free to do so. So I'm walking my dog in my neighborhood, and in my neighborhood I have Balearic Park. I'm walking Louis down the street, and what's the difference between me walking my dog in my neighborhood, which we're not talking about banning, and me walking through Balearic Park?
Chief Stefano, do you want to answer that? Or Chief Glass, whichever one.
Since I enforce both of them. So in regards to that, again, discretion. If we are closing the parks and we have it, that is the enforcement action we are taking as a city to deter people from that area and those gathering. And again, it's going to be on us to have that discretion if we're going to be enforcing it or not. But it's better to have the tool than not and having to come down the road, come back in a week or so to modify this if we start seeing a whole bunch of people walking through the park or people riding their bikes like I use as an example, and they start making, on dogs, start seeing everybody down there. We have to have it as a tool. Discretion, educational and discretion is going to be part of this going forward.
Thank you. Anything else to add? Okay. Okay. Councilmember Mansour. Councilmember Mar?
No.
Councilmember Chavez?
I don't have any questions, but everyone can say comments, so I want to comment on this too. I think we're at a critical point in this crisis where we have an opportunity to really make a difference, to bend the curve. I understand there's a lot of hesitation to do something so drastic, but I really want to just focus the conversation not on how it affects us now, but how it will affect us in a week from now if we don't do something. Let's look at Italy and Northern California as an example. Do we want to be someone who's doing things like closing down parks after it's become an issue or before it does? So I think for me, it's a moment about making clear we're keeping our residents safe to the best of our abilities. And just to be kind of frank, the kind of arguments I've heard have not been really substantial in a sense, because if you want to walk your dog, you can walk your dog without going to a park. We're supposed to be distancing ourselves from people, and over this weekend, sadly to say, we have demonstrated we can't do that as a community. So I think for that reason, we have to take this drastic step to ensure our community's safety as a whole. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynolds?
I appreciate the additional comments of our city manager and chiefs. I understand it's a incredibly serious situation, and we're potentially at the beginning of a surge, likely at the beginning of a surge. And I trust our recreation teams to come up with some creative ideas to help our residents get through this situation. So I'm very, very proud of our staff. I trust the team that we've put together to help us through this crisis. So the very, very, very heavy heart that I'll support the staff recommendation here and hope we can get through this as quickly as possible.
Okay, Councilmember Guinness, did you have any other questions before I open up for public comment?
I don't have any questions. I'd like to hear from, or I don't know if we're hearing from, hear the public comments.
Mm-hmm. I know, that's why I said, if you have no other questions, I'm going to open it up for public comment.
And I will wait to make my own comments till after public comment.
Okay, great. At this time, I'll open this item up for public comment. Ms. Green, can you read the public comment items? And I don't know if you got former Councilmember Lisa's updated comment.
Yes, I
Okay.
did, so I will not be reading those.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. This is from Jackson Kelly. I'd like to request that all Costa Mesa city parks, parking lots, and public restrooms be closed effective immediately. This weekend at Canyon Park, the parking lot was full and the foot traffic was extremely high. The weather this coming weekend is to be great, and without closure, the numbers will only get higher. This one's from Hank Castanetti. How will the ban on public use of parks and open spaces be enforced? Fairview is very unique due to its size and should have dedicated enforcement personnel on site. Will signs be posted and citations issued? J.M. Perler, please do not restrict use of the parks. We are stuck at home and need fresh air. Access to parks will promote mental health. Refusals will endanger mental health of the community. Instead of complete closure of parks, city can prohibit any group from congregating within the park. 2, allow limited number of people in the park at any given time. 3, enforce social distancing, except for people living in the same households. These rules can be enforced by park rangers who will be the police, and alternatively, the city can hire people in need of employment to manage park visitors. From Michelle Simpson, I live on 19th Street in Costa Mesa. I walk my dog twice daily in our parks. I am not seeing the kind of congregating that would cause the spread of the coronavirus. People are maintaining an extremely safe distance and avoiding contact with each other. Closure of our parks can be avoided if we just continue to follow the distance guidelines. My recommendation would be to post at all park entrances is some sort of a reminder of the distance guidelines and our responsibility as citizens to self-enforce. Swing sets and other playground equipment should be caution taped, since that is something that must be touched to use. Please consider this request, and thank you for all that you do to keep us safe and healthy. And that's it for this item.
Okay, thank you. We did receive several other emails, but I don't know if they went to the city clerk, because I received several emails. Do you want me to read them? I don't know if they went to the city clerk or not. Yeah, on this item. I received three emails.
Those are on the upcoming items.
Okay, but should I read the emails I received under this circumstance that I just want to make sure that. Wendy Lees, we're not reading hers because she withdrew her.
Okay. Well, that was kind of in general, but I can read Charlene's. Charlene Ashendorf said, sheltering in place doesn't come easy to those of us who are regular community volunteers on the front line, but so it is, and it's a good time to remind folks that there is much we can do to shelter in place. We must share resources by email, phone, and social media. Remember that many of our seniors living in age-restricted communities where staff may be working remotely or the community centers or computer labs are closed. That means we must do better to do more. We must make connections, pick up the phone, send a card or letter, or leave a note at a neighbor's door. I want to thank the staff serving our senior population, Yvette Aguilar, Mariana Pena, Angel Bear Franco, and the others on the front line. I've been hearing from seniors in the neighborhoods, from the Senior Center Roundtable, and the residents of the towers. What are seniors saying? Thank you for the weekly calls. It is good to hear from you. Our staff is communicating with our members. But if I were at the council meeting tonight, I would remind the public that although the Costa Mesa Senior Center programs have been suspended through April 30th, essential services continue, including the Orange County Meals on Wheels Cafe program, have been converted to frozen meals to take home Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10:30 to noon. Social services program are available Monday through Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. by calling community outreach worker Sharu Moody at 714-327-7545. Senior grocery program will offer distribution this Friday, March 27th from 10:30 to noon. And the Costa Mesa Senior Center is able to take your calls Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3:30. Thanks to staff who are networking with Trellis, Redemption Church, and also 211 to continue to address the needs of our seniors. Together we are better. I would also like to note that there will not be an April issue of the Chronicle. Staff is working to create a mailer, written communications to its members early in April with information on resources. Thank you for keeping our community safe. And as I mentioned, there was some comments by former Councilmember Lease, but she withdrew those. And then we do have some public comments, but on the upcoming items. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go back to my question, Ms. Barlow. If we received, because there was a bunch of emails that came into the city council, all email address, which I don't think go to the city clerk. So if we received those, do you want me to read those?
Yes, please, Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
Okay. Or I could just send them to you. Can you get them right now? Okay. So from now on, we'll know to send these to you if you're not copied on them. So I just sent you one from Mary Fuel, if you want to read that while I'm forwarding these others.
I received the notice via email tonight regarding the council special meeting tomorrow night and the item on closing the city parks. I very strongly object to such an action. I observed a tremendous amount of mental, emotional, and physical health being exercised this weekend in my local parks, including Canyon Park, Fairview Park, and Marina View Park, all with proper social distancing. This is a very trying time for our community, and being able to walk, bike, or jog in our city parks and is an important part of keeping people calm, especially children. I appreciate your no vote on this item and keeping all city parks open as usual. Mary Fuel. This one is from Marisol Hernandez. I am a citizen of Costa Mesa and live near Canyon Park. I am now working from home due to COVID-19. All last week, it helped tremendously to be able to go take a walk with my dogs to the park. It helped physically and mentally. Being stuck at home is really getting to some of us. In the last week, I came across people walking, biking, running, but everyone was mindful of keeping a distance from each other. I feel like closing the park trails for passing through, walking, running, biking will be a disservice for our community and will create more congestion on the streets because people will still go outside but won't have the space that the park trails offer. Please reconsider this and make an amendment to allow for pass-through access. I agree that people shouldn't gather and hang out at the park. Okay, this one's from Jack Morales. We are hearing that the city of Costa Mesa plans to close all parks indefinitely and will be voting tonight. Why in the world would we even consider doing this? Why not follow state and federal guidelines for social distancing and reopen public parks for normal use when feasible? This is the wrong message to our residents and will only add additional concerns and anxiety as to why this overreach is being implemented. Signed, a very concerned Costa Mesa resident. Please keep the parks and public spaces open. Continue to educate the community on proper social distancing. As the successful programs in Taiwan and South Korea have shown, testing and self-quarantine for those afflicted and their known contacts can and does work. The complete social and economic shutdown of our community and country will have devastating impacts that will last long after the virus is gone. Please keep our open spaces and golf course open. Set guidelines for their proper use and continue to educate the members of the community. Bob Knapp. Please carefully consider not closing the parks. Social spacing can be suggested, and they have been an important outlet for families who congregate safely. Vote no. Gordon Bowley. From Yancy Martinez, please don't close our kids' dreams. Is that it?
I think that was the last one.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. council members, did you all receive any email communications regarding this item from any member of the public? If so, please forward it to Ms. Green right now. Okay. I should have said that earlier. Apologize. Okay. We'll close public comment. And
I'd like to make a motion.
okay. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
I move to accept the staff recommendation, except for passive walk-through, pedestrian, and cycling activity.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I will make a substitute motion to accept the staff recommendation as presented.
Mar seconds.
Okay, we'll have discussion on the substitute motion first, and I'm going to go through the order. I'll explain the reasons for my substitute motion, let Councilmember Mar explain her reasons for the second, and then we'll go through comments, and then we'll vote. So this is very tough, but I'm listening to the experts that are telling us that the only way for us to stop the spread of the COVID-19 virus is to shut down. And I have been on multiple conference calls today with thousands of elected officials, public health officials, public safety officials around the entire country, as well as right here in Orange County. And every single advice given is to close your parks, get people to stay home. That is the advice. Stay home. Be unambiguous about it. Be aggressive about it, and encourage people to stay home. Don't create carve-outs. Don't create opportunities for people to find some loophole as to why they can go to the office or can't go to the office. Stay home. And the main reason, and one of the doctors who presented to us today from Harvard, he said, and he's working in a hospital in New York City right now, and they're getting, just hammered by this. And what he said was, this is a very, very aggressive virus that loves humans. It travels through human contact. And if the virus can't catch you, it can't make you sick. That's what he said. So if we are discouraging people from being out in places where the virus can catch them, we will be helping people to not get sick. I'm also concerned about the fact that a lot of the suggestions rely on our city's team and first responders to be out in the public to enforce these rules of social distancing. It's impossible, people. We're not in the same world. We're in a different world right now. We don't have people to be out enforcing these rules. We have a good number of our city team are working telecommuting from home. We don't have the ability to just send someone out like we would have even just 1 month ago, a week ago. I mean, we are in a different world, and we need to adjust to the difference. We need to be flexible, and we need to do everything we can so that we can say we did everything we could to save people's lives, to stop the spread, and to flatten the curve, because that's the only way we're going to get through this. And people, I think Councilmember Mar said it best, I mean, people's lives are being disrupted. They're being destroyed right now. They're losing their businesses, they're losing their jobs, and the longer we prolong the pain, it's just going to be worse for people. You talk about people's mental health, people are going to be in severe, desperate mental state if we don't stop this soon so that we can get back to some semblance of normal. But I don't want to give anybody any false expectation that normal is going to come in a week or 2 weeks. Everything that I'm hearing, and it's quite distressing. I will tell you, the information that I am receiving every single day, it's difficult to learn. It's difficult to hear. It's difficult to read. It's causing, my own stress because we're all having to know way more than we all want to know about this. It's one of those times in my life where I actually feel like ignorance is bliss, and I wish I didn't know what I know. But on the other hand, I'm empowered by the tools so that I can help people to understand why it's so important that we take these drastic measures. And I fully support the staff. I trust the staff. I just want to give you all some numbers that we saw here just in Orange County. In Orange County, today, hold on, let me find my notes here. The number of cases are at 152. That's up from 125 yesterday. Plus, we now had a death. The day before yesterday, we were at 95. So as Mr. Dempsey indicated, it's accelerating at an aggressive pace. We want to accelerate the prevention of the spread. As the city manager indicated, we have a surge of 50,000 beds, and we're trying to find 50,000 beds in the state of California. And right now, according to the Orange County Public Health, our current hospitals in Orange County are at 60% right now today, with people in them right now before the surge. So we have to do what we can to prevent the inability of our healthcare system to be able to help people. So all of the best practices, all of the advice from all over the country, from people who are way smarter than I am, is to stay home. It's very hard. My 93-year-old grandmother is stuck at home with us. We're terrified. I'm terrified to be in this room right now because I have to go back home and I'm going to take all my clothes off. I'm going to put them in the wash. I'm going to take a shower because this is my new normal. And I haven't hugged her in 10 days because I'm too afraid that I might accidentally cause her to get sick at 93. And really, I don't know what would happen. There would probably be no help for her. So it's very important that we all do our part to stay at home. I've been at home, except for to come here, for, 6 days now. I got in my car. I didn't get out of my car. So please, stay home. Councilmember Marr.
I don't have very much to add. I think I said it earlier. I've never taken my role as a policymaker more seriously than I have right now because we're talking about people's lives. Yeah. And while there's anecdotal information about, I was in this part of the park and it wasn't busy. I will tell you, I ran back day on Sunday and it wasn't running. I was standing in line because there were so many people on the trail. And, and I run back right every weekend, and I know that's not normal. And so I echo everything the mayor said. We have a very limited window. We're going to see that 152 number continue to double probably every 2 to 3 days for the next 2 weeks because of action we didn't take 2 weeks ago. And so, this is now or never time. We have to do everything we possibly can. And I know this is an inconvenience, but it's one we're going to have to live with. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Guinness.
I will not be supporting the substitute motion. I understand the need for the distancing, but I don't believe the main motion eliminates that need for distancing. And I also believe that with people losing their jobs, with people really, really stressed, there is going to be fallout, especially with the kids out of school and everything. There will be fallout if people aren't able to at least get some fresh air and sunshine somewhere. And walking on the sidewalk in front of their house and around their block, they're probably more likely to see somebody than if they cut through an open space. There's more room to separate yourself. So I actually was more inclined initially to ask that we keep Fairview and Canyon open, but the pictures kind of changed my mind. But at least as keep people moving along outdoors, I think that's essential for people's their mental health and their physical health, or we will have other problems on our hands, not just the health crisis. We will have another crisis on our hands.
Councilman Reynolds.
This is a very difficult decision. I know that our staff, our emergency services team, our chiefs, our city manager, assistant city manager, rec teams, you guys are on the front lines of this and are hearing every day. So I will trust your recommendation here. I think one of the real challenges is a lot of the folks that we're hearing from are the people who are following the social distancing rules. And it's unfortunately, this is a situation where all it takes is a few people who aren't following the rules to create a very, very dangerous situation for the rest of us, including our first responders and folks on the front line. If our staff believe this is the best way to keep everyone safe, I do trust you. You guys are professionals here. As we're seeing the numbers climb, I know we need to act firmly. This is actually the third sort of shutdown situation I've been a part of in my life, and I will say that I think the enforcement works. And I would encourage. I appreciate Chief Glass's comments about using discretion in different situations. I would encourage us to strongly enforce any gathering or loitering or blatant disregard for the social distancing rules. I think that's very effective. I think we do need to get signage out there. So with strong signage that members of the community can point to help other community members recognize the importance of the situation, and strict enforcement where there are groups gathering. I hope that can get us through this more quickly. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you. I too will be supporting the motion. I think for me the most important thing on my mind is really saving the most lives possible. And I truly believe that doing this will save the most lives possible. I look back in our country's history, and every time there's a crisis, there's a call to action from our citizens. Our call to action is to stay home. Our call to action is to not spread a virus. Maybe it isn't the most glamorous call to action that a generation has faced in this country, but it's the one we're facing the most, because I said this last week, and I'll say it this week, and I'll say it next week, and I'll keep saying it until it's over. You can have the virus and not know you have it. It's not about thinking about oneself, but about our neighbors, those who have immune systems that are compromised, those who are elderly. It's not about us. It's not about time for us to think about ourselves, but about others. So I think doing this will save the most lives, and that's why I'm supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mansour. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, did you have anything else to add?
Yes. So, no disrespect to staff. Thank you for all the work you have done on this. But I think it's, as you pointed out, a matter of public policy. I'm against gatherings in the park. I'm against using the basketball hoops and the volleyball courts and the fitness area and the picnic benches. But I think we are required to stay at home. I get that. But people are walking around neighborhoods. Sometimes we have neighborhood parks, and people are going to walk through those parks, and it's going to be very difficult to enforce. I don't think, based on the comments of the chief, that it will be enforced, walking through and cycling through the park. So I would favor the the original motion, which is also consistent with what the County of Orange is doing. And I don't think that they've been soft on this issue. So my way of advocating for the original motion, which I think is more sensible public policy with all respect to everything that everyone said here. And I mean that. I respect everyone. So I won't be supporting the substitute motion, because I think the original motion is better public policy, more realistic, and more kind of direct and candid about how we're going to enforce this. And it also keeps the community just as safe as the substitute motion. So I'll be voting no on the substitute motion, and I would urge everybody to support the original motion.
Okay, thank you. And I'll be supporting the original, the substitute motion for all the reasons I expressed previously. Call for the question with the voice vote.
Councilmember Chavez.
Yes.
Councilmember Guinness.
No.
Councilmember Mansour. No. Councilmember Marr.
Yes.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
No.
Mayor Foley.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-3 with Council Members Mansour, Ganis, and Mayor Pro Tem Stevens voting no.
Okay, thank you. We will now move to item number 4.
This is adoption of urgency ordinance entitled An Urgency Ordinance of the City of Costa Mesa, California relating to a temporary moratorium on evicting tenants and declaring the ordinance to be an emergency measure to take effect immediately upon adoption. Presentation by Ms. Farrell Harrison, City Manager.
Presentation will be made by Kim Barlow. Thank you.
Yes, I'll be happy to do it. Thank you. Mayor, members of the council, we have brought before you this evening in accordance with the authority granted by Governor Newsom's order issued on March 19th. I think that was the one. I think that's the one. In any event, one of the emergency orders issued by the governor authorized local jurisdictions to impose moratoria or delays on evictions of tenants specifically related to COVID-19. That is for non-payment of rent because of either quarantine, inability to work, illness, loss of jobs, and needing to take care of minor children who are out of school. For that reason, we prepared an ordinance for your consideration that would do that for both commercial and residential tenancies. The ordinance provides that there would the rent would still be due. There would be a 120-day repayment period after the conclusion of the emergency. There would be an obligation on the part of the tenant to notify the landlord of their inability to pay and to provide documentation supporting the fact that their inability was related to COVID-19 financial impacts. Be happy to answer any questions you have, and we are available. Mr. Curtis and I are both available for questions.
Okay, we'll start with Councilmember Guinness. Any questions?
Yes, I have a couple questions. The state has provided this as an option for local communities. I don't know if this would be happening at the state level or possibly the county level, but has there been any sort of moratorium on collection of the second installment on real estate taxes that would normally be due April 10th? For example, if a landlord waives an eviction, will they be also waived from having to pay their property tax in a timely manner?
The governor is considering that right now. There's been several requests, and I have been here for the last several hours, so I haven't got to read any of the updates, but the governor has that under consideration right now.
Yeah, because I researched it today, and everything seemed to show that the taxes, I already paid mine in December, but it seemed to indicate that for those who hadn't yet paid them, they were going to be due, regardless of the situation. Okay, and then my second question is there a possibility, I'm concerned about the city being on the hook, if this were considered a taking pursuant to the Fifth Amendment, and looking at, for example, the Dolan case, even a temporary taking requires some type of compensation. That would be from Ms. Barlow.
Yes.
Ms. Barlow?
There's always some concern about that. It is, as a practical matter right now, the courts are effectively closed. So,
True. Well, then you can't even get the marshals out to evict anybody either then.
yeah, so I mean, this is, I think, one step out of many that is going to provide protections for tenants. It would be very difficult to show for any particular landlord that our action, as opposed to the inaccessibility of the courts, was the cause of the delay in their receiving payment. The limitation for proof of need, I think, is critical. And we also do have some immunities that are provided to us based upon the declaration of a national, state, county, and local emergency.
And then also, there's a provision that the renter would not pay any interest on late payments. However, that's kind of moot right now because rates are so low. So does putting it in there muddy the waters further, or does it just make it cleaner in that it mirrors the state?
It makes it cleaner because the statutory interest rate in the state of California is 10%.
Oh my gosh.
Still. So it does not matter what the Fed rate is, and it does not matter what credit card companies are charging, and it does not matter what your mortgage interest rate is. It is a very high statutory rate. So we recommend including that provision.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynolds?
No questions.
Councilmember Chavez?
I do have some questions for staff. So I'm looking at the ordinance right now, and I really like what's written. I like the fact that we are taking into account that rent is still going to be due at the end of the period. I do have one question, though. I know it's stating that for those taking this opportunity, they need to put in writing how the COVID-19 affected their job. I have a question for those in my district court 1099, so those who own their own businesses. How would they go about doing that?
Ms. Barlow?
Yes, the very same way that they will be documenting their need for government grants and loans that are going to be available. That is, if they have a business license or some kind of certification, they will have clients. They can probably get letters from clients. There are many, many ways that people who are in business can demonstrate their inability to work, including but not limited to appointment books showing cancellations, the fact that they may have been deemed a non-essential service under the governor's order or under the federal government's order. So there's, I think, a number of ways that someone will be able to demonstrate that. And I'm sure that there will be some assistance that's going to be provided by FEMA and other governmental agencies for people to document those kinds of things.
Thank you. And then my next question is more for city staff as a whole. How are we going to go about, if this passes, of course, how are we going to go about spreading information to our residents? Is it going to be bilingual? Are we going to have we promoting on the website? What's going to be the course of action? Because my fear really is that should this pass, there could be people in my district who, for being only Spanish speakers, or not having access to internet won't know they have this opportunity.
Ms. Farrell Harrison?
Councilmember Chavez, thank you for that comment. We're going to put together the communications team to come up with a robust strategy to make sure that we're hitting all audiences. We'll probably get this information out, absolutely multilingual, also by mailer, by website, by tweet, through every possible medium that we can. And if you have any specific ideas as well in terms of different community groups that we can get the information out to that could then get it out to their memberships, we can also coordinate with the school district, see if they could get that information out through School Loop or some of their means to make sure that every family is aware. And so we'll do the best that we can to blast this out on as many different media fronts and different communication methods as possible.
All right, thank you. That's all.
Okay, Councilmember Marr.
No question.
Councilmember Mansour?
Ms. Barlow, can you clarify, is this state law already, or it was a directive from the governor, and was it, does a directive or state law simply allow each city to vote on this? So it's not already in place, on a statewide level, it's up to each jurisdiction?
That's correct, sir. The governor's order authorized it, but did not require it. It did not make it statewide. It was up to each individual jurisdiction.
Okay. Excuse me. So the concern I have with this is unintended consequences. We're not taking into consideration the landlord's mortgage. If they're not receiving rent, how do they pay their mortgage? Are they going to fall behind on their payments? Are they going to go into foreclosure? Not everybody is the Irvine Company. There are mom and pop owners. There are small owners that own a property that maybe that's part of their retirement income, or maybe it's just a small business that they have and they rely on that. I don't think we're taking into consideration if someone can make a partial payment. So my concern is with the unintended consequences, kind of a domino effect, but also the next item we're going to be considering tonight has to do with rental assistance. So unless I'm missing something, if we pass rental assistance, then that may render this more useless and kind of vice versa. So I don't know if we need both. So I just think there's a lot more to consider than just passing something quickly and not considering all of the unintended consequences that may result. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. I'm really concerned, and I want the city attorney to comment on this specifically, that while I completely support the rent abatement, the eviction moratorium is what I meant to say. I'm concerned about this 120-day plan, which really it amounts to a city-imposed workout between the tenant and the landlord. And as I'm reading the executive order, I do believe that exceeds our authority under the executive order, and I'm reading from the executive order specifically where at section 2 it reads, quote, "Nothing in this order shall relieve a tenant of the obligation to pay rent, nor restrict a landlord's ability to recover rent due." And I do believe that by telling tenants and landlords that the landlords in Costa Mesa must give the tenants an additional 120 days to pay their rent after the eviction moratorium ends, and they must do so at a no-interest loan, that we're exceeding the authority provided to us by Governor Newsom under the executive order, based on the language that I quoted. Why am I wrong?
Ms. Barlow?
Well, I don't want to have a debate with you, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens. I think we tried to establish a reasonable payback period. I think that's a policy call for the council to make. You could, in theory, make it due the day after the declaration of the emergency. As a practical matter, that is going to be difficult for people. We were looking at what were being predicted as some recovery times for the economy to get up and running again, for people to begin working again, et cetera. Again, the mechanism by which you determine, for example, whether someone who's suffered a partial loss of income should pay some of the rent but not all of it, those are all within your policy discretion to make. The repayment period is also within that discretion.
Well, excuse me, if I could just ask the question again, because I don't mean it to be a debate. What is it in the executive order specifically that empowers us to, as a policy matter, impose a repayment period subsequent to the eviction moratorium? Where's the language?
It's because the executive order says only that the city cannot say you don't have to pay the rent. It doesn't dictate that we can't make the rent that was owed due at different times. It just says they still have to pay that rent that was owed.
Yeah, I think
City Attorney?
in essence, you would be continuing the ban on evictions essentially beyond the duration of the emergency by giving the tenant the time to repay.
Right.
So
Isn't that restricting the landlord's ability to recover the rent due?
It is delaying it, yes. And you could choose a shorter period of time. You could not specify a period of time. The concern was that there would be lack of certainty on this issue. I know there's been a sort of a clarion call for the governor to do something statewide because of these kinds of questions. But again, that's a policy call for the council. I do believe you can do it as part of the police powers that have been granted pursuant to the order.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, do you have any other questions?
One last question. Is there any reason why we couldn't decouple these issues and put together a full and complete and broad eviction moratorium tonight and further research whether we have authority to grant the repayment aspects of the ordinance? Any reason why we couldn't do one tonight and further research the other?
No, sir. No reason we can't do that.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, I have a couple of questions. I'm looking, it looks like as of today, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cities so far. It doesn't include, I understand Anaheim in Orange County and Santa Ana also have eviction moratoriums on their agendas, and several other cities in Orange County tonight. So the summaries are not up to date, but there's a growing number of cities in California that are doing this. And City of Fresno, they have 6 months to repay. City of LA has 6 months to repay, but they're considering making the moratorium 12 months. And a couple of these other cities have 30 days, and then some don't address the payment issue at this time. So what I'm concerned about is something slightly different. I'm concerned that if we require the tenants, whether it be a residential tenant or a commercial tenant, to pay within 120 days from the expiration of the declared emergency, we are essentially making on day one, after the emergency ceases, them doubling, because that's 4 months only. They're going to be, probably, we're going to have this emergency declaration for estimate 2-3 months. And so we are almost doubling the rent every month for those individuals at a time when on day one of the emergency going away, they may not even have a job back yet. So I don't know that, I think we're setting people up for not being able to pay the rent as soon as it becomes due if we make it this 120 days. I think that's aggressive. It basically doubles the rent for people for to be able to pay, and I don't see that they're going to be able to do it. It's setting them up for failure. That's how I view this. So what I want to know is, and then the other question I have is, as I understand it, at least anybody who has a Fannie Mae mortgage and many, many other lenders are giving mortgage relief right now. They're tacking it on to the end of the mortgage, for example, right?
Many mortgage companies are doing that. In fact, the federal government has ordered Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the FHA to postpone or avoid, defer, whatever, and they're not doing foreclosures for mortgage. So there will probably be some of the landlords for whom this will be not as big a hit.
Right.
They may get some deferral on the mortgage. The question will be, it'll go to the end, and maybe there's a little more interest that way. But yeah, I think there's going to be a bigger and bigger move, especially from some of the private bankers to do that. Right now, only the feds can order them to defer, but there's a lot of consumer pressure right now.
So in our city, where we have a lot of service industry workers, a lot of hourly workers, and especially in District 4, and I think also in District 3, we have a lot of people who have all lost their jobs all at once due to no fault of their own. And some may not be eligible for government assistance in terms of unemployment and benefits. And so I guess my concern is this 120 days. So there'd be no reason why we couldn't make it 6 months, right?
The only concern that we have is that the longer period of time you make it, the more likely somebody will, pursue a takings claim. We're trying to sort of strike a balance, but again, that's a policy call for the council to make.
Okay, and then is there a way to incorporate into the ordinance that if the mortgagee was provided mortgage relief, that there could be some consideration of even waiving the rent, but that might not be possible under the executive order?
It is not under the executive order. It does not relieve a tenant of the obligation to pay.
Okay, so would there be a way, well, that might be too complicated. Okay, and then my other question is, the way we have this written, maybe we could add language, try to find it. I think it would be helpful because, people shouldn't be getting a windfall if they didn't have an impact that's related to COVID-19. So that is a concern. There are some jobs that are essential workers where people are still just getting their regular paycheck and their rent won't be impacted. So maybe there is some way to put into here that language that you talked about, and you can think about that while we open up for public comment, but about they have to prove that their job was eliminated because they're not an essential service.
I could provide some language for that.
Okay. And I will open up to public comment.
I have one more question.
Okay, Councilmember Guinness.
Just real quick. Who will be the arbiter as to whether they can't pay their rent because of COVID-19 or just they wouldn't be able to pay their rent anyway? who will decide if the evidence is adequate to demonstrate that?
That will be up to the courts if and when there is litigation between the parties over that. That is not a matter that will be resolved by the city.
Right, that would just be, they would have to show that to the landlord. If the landlord doesn't agree, then they'd have to go through the normal landlord-tenant,
Correct.
procedure.
Correct.
In the closed courts. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, public comment, Ms. Green?
Thank you. We have a couple. How is Costa Mesa protecting working families who have mortgages? I would like to ask the council members to explore options that include a moratorium on foreclosures as well. It's by Tanya Navarro. Dan Oliver, as a resident of Costa Mesa who is temporarily out of work without pay, I'm very concerned with my living situation. I implore you to pass items 4 and 5 on tonight's agenda. I've been a restaurant server, bartender for nearly 17 years. I'm now in the toughest place I've ever been. My company only offers a max of 3 days sick pay at minimum wage, and I can even get that because I don't have enough accrual hours to receive it. I filed for unemployment insurance but have yet to get a response back on my application. Knowing that I will not get evicted at the end of the month will be of monumental relief. Thank you all for your service in these tough times. I'm a resident living and working in Costa Mesa. As many of us during this absolutely insane time in the world, I became unemployed from my career of almost 2 decades. I'm calling on the City Council and the Mayor of Costa Mesa to initiate a rent freeze on our city, save all of us from falling into extreme debt during this pandemic so that we can get back to business as usual. Thank you for your time and consideration. Bo Brady. Sandy Worrell. Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive order Monday night authorizing local governments to ban evictions of renters and homeowners unable to pay their rent or mortgages because they are out of work due to COVID-19. People shouldn't lose or be forced out of their home because of the spread of COVID-19, Newsom said in a statement. Over the next few weeks, everyone will have to make sacrifices, but a place to live shouldn't be one of them. I strongly encourage cities and counties to take up this authority to protect Californians. One of my neighbors who rents a home on the state streets has lost his job, and so has his wife. They are unable to pay rent, aren't expected to be evicted. Please pass a ban on evictions here in Costa Mesa. They have lived in our community for 15 years. It is not their fault. They should be given the chance to stay in their home, and they are just one example. I'm sure there are thousands of families affected in the same way. Please take immediate action to protect them. Thank you very much. As a newly formed brewery in the city of Costa Mesa, it is with great urgency I'm writing to push for a temporary moratorium on eviction of commercial tenants unable to pay rent due to the COVID-19 virus. I'm certain almost every small business in the city is in my same predicament. Without any revenue coming in, it's going to be impossible to sustain operations. I am currently trying to generate a small bit of revenue by selling beer to go for curbside pickup. It is producing approximately 1/5 of my normal revenue. Something is better than nothing, as they say. Being a Costa Mesa resident and business owner, I take great pride in my city and neighborhood. I hope to be a fixture for Costa Mesa for years to come, providing a great establishment for families to enjoy a relaxed setting and some outstanding beer. I look forward to seeing some, if not all of you, at Salty Bear in the near future when the tide has changed and we can resume operations. In the meantime, I look for your guidance and support. My best, Joe Scagliotti, founder of Salty Bear Brewing Company. I think the city of Costa Mesa should impose a restriction on all evictions for small businesses and renters in the coming months. We could potentially set up payment plans to pay our landlords back. Thank you very much. Can you please clarify the landlord's right to evict a tenant who is not affected financially but wants to use the ordinance and refuse to pay? Residents can also make partial payments if they are receiving unemployment. Also, what about the stimulus package? If tenants receive both unemployment and money from the stimulus package, Are they really unable to pay at that point? Can you also consider exclusions potentially for landlords that own less than a certain number of properties? They are more affected than the typical Irvine company. Mortgage relief isn't the only thing to consider. For some, this is their retirement. They rent out just a couple of homes they've invested in, and that is their income. Please consider landlords that only own 1 or 2 homes. Adele Bude. Okay, that's the same one. That's all I have.
Okay, I'm just making sure I didn't get any others. Okay. I don't have any others either. Okay, close public comment.
This is
And,
Andrea. I'd like to make a motion.
okay, Councilmember Mar.
I'd like to approve the urgency ordinance, adopt the urgency ordinance as written.
I'll second it.
Okay, Councilmember Mar, you want to give want to speak to your motion?
I do. So I think both the staff report and the ordinance were written very well. So thank you, staff. This was exactly what I was looking for after the governor passed the executive order. I was pushing for us to execute something like this at the city level. There's 2 sentences in particular here that I think really kind of capture the intent. And those are: providing tenants with short-term protection from eviction due to the inability to pay rent will help stabilize the rental housing market by reducing displacement during the state of emergency, and in the interest of protecting the public health and preventing transmission of the coronavirus, it is essential to avoid unnecessary displacement of tenants and potential homelessness. As we all know, there are businesses that are going out of business every day. There are companies laying off employees. This is going to be a tremendous, this part of our economy is going to be horrifically impacted. And the part of the economy specifically are renters, like the 60% renters that we have in our city. We also are property owners and have tenants, and I'm fully aware that many of them are likely to lose their jobs in the next couple of weeks if they haven't yet. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us as policymakers to make sure that we are not allowing families to be on the streets because they couldn't pay their rent for a couple of months. I think the 4 months actually strikes the right balance. My private mortgage company is allowing for a 3-month deferral on mortgages. So it's already extending past just Fannie Mae at this point. And I think that's going to become more likely, which sort of allows this 4-month thing to not be as painful, the 4-month deferral. I also think on the commercial side, just like the Salty Bear email, we've got small businesses in the city who are laying off their employees, who are trying to keep the lights on, who are making 10, 15% of what they were making before. Their takeout, Wayfair closed down completely. The owner of that is one of my neighbors. And the big concern is whether or not they're going to be able to open in time to make any revenue such that they can pay their rent. And for commercial properties in the city, we're talking $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a month. That's pretty considerable when you're not making any money, much less paying your employees. So, this isn't something I think any of us necessarily wanted to do as policymakers, but these are desperate times, and we're going to have consequences to deal with really for the rest of the year in terms of our city finances, but also in terms of unemployment and homelessness in the city. And so every action that we can take that helps to defer those things happening in the city are ones that I think we need to take immediately without hesitation and in the strongest possible way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez.
Very eloquent words from Councilmember Mar. I feel her sentiment entirely, and I'm just going to piggyback off with him and to kind of paint a picture for us. I keep saying that the first and foremost thing you care about is lives, and that's true. But the second thing you care about is the economy when we come back from this, because this will pass at some point. At some point, this crisis will go over. the virus will be gone, we'll have a vaccine, we will all have gotten it, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, this will end. And when it does end, we need to make sure we are setting ourselves up for success. You know, we're seeing all levels of government, from federal to state, do what they can in their part. I am very pleased the federal government is pushing the companies that own mortgages to do deferment, because that will help the apartment owners who have mortgages. And in turn, we hope that that'll trickle down and help out those people in apartments who can't afford the rent. I think this is a very balanced ordinance. I do like the fact that we are requiring them to pay the rent. You know, that to me is very fair. I think that 4 months is a very fair thing to ask someone to do. I hear Mayor Foley's concerns, though, that it may be too little time. However, I look at other cities, and I don't think they have a 4 month. I think they have a 3 months. So that makes me feel a bit more comfortable that we're being a bit more proactive than others. And overall, for me, this is about security of mind. You know, if we really want people to stay home and during this crisis and not have to go out, then let's make it so those workers who are 1099, who work on their own businesses, who perhaps are going out right now because they have to maintain the rent and the food, have one thing to worry about. And perhaps that will encourage them to actually stay in the house and not go out and potentially spread the disease more. So I echo everything Councilmember Marsh said. I think this is a very fair ordinance, so I'm supporting it.
Okay, Councilmember Guinness.
Would the maker of the motion agree to place a date certain in the ordinance, Section 1A, instead of remains in effect until the expirations of the governor's order or any extensions, and instead put in the May 31st, which is actually in the executive order?
Councilmember Marr?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much value that has at this point, because I think if you look at Los Angeles, I mean, they're already planning on having to extend. I think San Francisco made it 30 days, and then they came back and said, well, never mind, it's going to be at the extension of the governor. I don't know that really adds anything at this point. We don't know when this is going to be over.
So you wouldn't accept that?
No.
And then would the maker of the motion accept an exclusion for owners of 3 or fewer dwelling units?
No, I think that, even if you own one property, the mortgage companies at this point are highly likely to also be extending mortgage payments. So I understand the concern about those who receive income through leasing out properties, but I would like to do this across the board for maximum possible effect.
Okay, well, then I will not be supporting the motion, though I recognize the need for relief, especially since the governor told people to shut their businesses, and then obviously there needs to be relief. But unfortunately, we are looking for a societal good that will be basically supported through a massive asset transfer from a lot of mom and pop landlords. And maybe for a month or two, yeah, they're going to do their part, but by leaving this open-ended, they're not going to get free groceries at Ralph's. They're not going to have their property insurance waived by Allstate, probably. They're not going to get free car repairs when they go over to Connell or Robbins. And so a lot of these are retirees, and this is their income. This is, in many cases, except for like minimal Social Security, their only income. And this is what they planned for decades when they retired, and now we're pulling the rug out from under them. And I can't do that to our seniors, our senior mom and pop landlords. I just can't. I feel for the people who've lost their jobs, but I also feel for the people on the other end too. And especially making it an unlimited time and applying it not just to the Irvine companies of the world, but to the little guys. That's just not right. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Reynolds.
It is another very, very difficult situation. I think that this is not going to be our last action in response to mitigating the impacts of this completely unprecedented situation we're in. I agree with what Councilmember Mar and Chavez described as the urgency of kind of keeping families in their home and keeping sort of some peace of mind about being able to stay in their homes through at least the next couple of months as we've globally, right, instilled this shutdown. I've been thinking also, while our staff are working on the front lines every day, I know other council members as well are thinking about the long term and how we rebuild and our families, keeping our families housed and keeping our businesses intact is an essential part of that rebuilding process. So I think we need to do what we can, and it's going to be iterative. And again, I don't think this is going to be our last action related to all these impacts as we continue to process what's happening. But I think this is a necessary one now, so I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay, Councilmember Mansour.
Thank you. I tend to agree with Councilmember Guinness. I appreciate the hardships. There are extreme difficulties that a lot of people are facing right now. Whether you're the renter or the property owner, I can see hardship on both sides. My concern I expressed earlier with the unintended consequences and, the small mom and pop, rentals where they're just renting 1 or 2 units. The stimulus funds that may come in and help people out, the ability for people to negotiate directly with their landlord and maybe come up with an alternative plan without us interfering. All these options are still on the table, and so I have a hard time supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Yeah, I just have, before I state what I think about the motion, I just have one quick question for the maker of the motion. So under the scope, subsection B, it reads, this ordinance applies to all residential commercial tenants within the city of Costa Mesa. As I read that, I read it to be very broad and to virtually include every bit of rental real estate within the city of Costa Mesa with no exceptions. So there are 2 types. One's residential, one's commercial, and everything is included. Correct?
Ms. Barlow?
Yes, that includes everyone, so long as the basis for the eviction is an inability to pay rent due to COVID-19 related impacts.
All right. Now, I am going to support the motion. I agree that it's. I appreciate the motion. I appreciate the work. I like what the governor's done. I did pepper the city attorney with some questions. I was persuaded by a comment that Mayor Foley made about the restructuring time being included in other jurisdictions. The city attorney did not correct that, so I assume that that's true. And so that satisfied my concern on that. And I do credit the concerns of Councilmember Guinness. I understand that, and the points are reasonable. But I think under the circumstances, this is the right thing to do for the greater number of citizens and businesses in the city of Costa Mesa. So I support the motion.
Thank you. Okay, I will support the motion. I agree with everything that's been said. We're in uncharted territory here, and we must give a lifeline to our residents, our small business owners, and people who are just literally sinking right now. And I personally, and I know other council members could probably echo this, have talked to, every day this week, I've had calls starting as early as 6:45 a.m. From both tenants who are tenants of in a commercial property, and they're small business owners, and they're terrified that in some cases, they just spent all the capital that they had to open their business, and they opened, within the last 6 months, and they were just getting started, and they're shut down. And everything we've been doing, I know Councilmember Reynolds, Councilmember Marr, all of us have been really trying to help a lot of our restaurants to, get delivery and curbside takeout, but it's just a drop in the bucket for them to be able to stay open. And so to the extent that we can provide this little bit of relief and possibly, just possibly, save some of those businesses, that's going to help us recover. In addition, as far as it relates to residents, I mean, we have a lot of residents, no one's mentioned this directly, but we have a lot of residents in this city who do not have jobs that will allow them to be eligible for the government unemployment insurance, family paid leave, sick leave. They're just not going to be eligible. And they have jobs where they clean people's homes. Guess what? No one wants anyone coming into their home right now. They are not going to be able to make any money. They have jobs where they go out and they have a little independent contractor business and they do all kinds of side jobs. It's questionable as to whether or not they're going to have sufficient payments into the system to be able to take any money out. And the amount that you can get right now is about $455 a week. So that is not very much. That's the maximum amount you can get right now. Granted, I've written many letters in support of stimulus packages to help everybody, from the mom and pop to the hotel industry to just the everyday person who's just trying to make a living and get through this terrible crisis. So I think we have to give our residents and our small business owners a lifeline. I have a couple of questions for the maker of the motion. Would the maker of the motion be willing to, I'm looking at it online. It is Section G, repayment of rent required. And it's the sentence that begins partway through the sentence on the left side, event later than 120 days from the expiration of the term. So basically it's the sentence that says you have to pay within 120 days or 4 months from the date that the city is no longer in a declared emergency. So would the maker of the motion be willing to tack on to the end of that sentence the clause, unless a separate agreement is agreed to by the parties?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Barlow?
Real quick, for clarity, actually, the term is the governor's executive order declaring an emergency, not the city.
Oh, thank you. That's right. Okay. Yep. So, Ms. Barlow, is there any reason why we cannot make that change?
So no, we would add at the end of that sentence, unless the parties otherwise agree in writing.
There you go. That's better. Okay. And maybe, as I'm listening to you say that, maybe we need to make it so otherwise but agree in writing. Okay, that's sufficient. Councilmember Chavez, does the second concur?
Yes.
Okay, so the reason I bring that up is because we all probably got notice. I don't know who got notice. I got notice of Irvine Company has already made agreements with all of their tenants. They have a whole program that they've put together. And so they have already begun that process. Additionally, there are certainly landlords in the city of major properties or small properties that are already working on individualized agreements with their tenants that may be even better than this deal that we have crafted here. So I wouldn't want them to not get the benefit of those agreements because we have said this is the term. So that's the justification for my change. Secondly, would the maker of the motion be willing to exclude individuals who are tenants receiving full wages from unemployment or stimulus relief?
So if they,
Can I explain just real quick? So
yeah,
we don't want
I'm
to create a
also wanna-
windfall for people who are still working in an essential service and just they haven't had any impact to their income at all. And then we would create I think a disadvantage for the property owner, but a windfall for that tenant who's just going to try to take advantage of this ordinance. So I'm not trying to give people a windfall. I'm just trying to help people that are really, truly, losing their income.
Great. So I'm looking at C.1. The basis for the eviction is
Right.
non-payment of rent or foreclosure arising out of substantial decrease in household or business income. So, I mean, conceivably, if they're receiving benefits through other programs, and is that still a substantial decrease
Here,
in
let
household
me just
income?
reread it real quick. The basis for including but not limited to a substantial decrease in household income caused by layoffs or a reduction in the number. So, so maybe there's a way to, because right now, today, there might be a tenant that applies to. But then next month, that might not apply to them anymore. So I don't know, is there language in there?
I think the intent.
Or do you think it covers it?
Yeah, I think it covers it.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure it's covered. And then you were going to provide, Ms. Barlow, additional language for that section that says about the, that they would be eligible if their job was eliminated because it was not an essential service. And the reason for that language is because some people, like Councilmember Chavez mentioned, may not have any documentary proof other than that.
Yes.
Could you tack it on to including but not limited to, comma,
Yes.
a substantial decrease in household income, comma, a loss of wages due to having a non-essential job? Is that better?
Lay loss or a reduction in number of compensable hours of work or elimination of a non-essential job.
There you go. Okay. All right. Does the second concur?
Yes.
Okay. And Councilmember Mar, I'm sorry, you concurred?
I was yelling concur, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, appreciate that. All right, that's all I have. Thank you so much for all the hard work, everybody. This is a quick turnaround. Call for the question by voice vote.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Yes.
Sorry. Councilmember Mar.
Yes.
Councilmember Mansour. No. Councilmember Guinness.
No.
Councilmember Chavez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Yes.
Mayor Foley.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2 with council members Mansour and Guinness voting no.
Okay. Item number 5.
This is COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Presentation by Ms. Farrell Harrison, City Manager.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The item before you this evening is for consideration of an emergency rental assistance program. We just discussed an eviction moratorium. However, we did want to bring multiple tools for your consideration in order to ameliorate some of the impacts to our residents from COVID-19 and the displacement of thousands of individuals from their places of work and their inability to basically be able to sustain themselves and be able to afford the basics while we're going through this pandemic. What What is before you this evening is to consider whether that you'd like to direct the city manager and the city attorney to create an emergency rental assistance program to appropriate approximately $250,000 from the city's general fund. And then hopefully we could receive reimbursement from state and/or federal disaster relief funds to create a program to try to avoid homelessness, assist low-income and vulnerable renters, and provide some sort of rental assistance in order to keep families on their feet and to avoid a rise in homelessness. We've done a great job in addressing homelessness in our city. We're often contacted by other cities to replicate the great work that we've been doing with our outreach team, our in-reach team, in collaboration with Mercy House, and of course, Pastor Phil Akins of the Lighthouse Church. And so this is yet another item for your consideration to enable families to remain intact, to avoid being displaced, and to give some type of financial assistance for them to be able to continue to stay in rental housing during this crisis. That's my report for now, and we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Council members. Councilmember Guinness?
Hi, I lost mine for a minute. Was I being called on?
Councilmember Guinness, did you have any questions?
Yeah. Because the 250 doesn't seem like it'll go very far. And do we know in the stimulus package if there's additional funding for housing and also if there's any funding for commercial relief or where we might find some funding for commercial renter relief?
We're not aware of any of funding at this time. However, it is something that we have been communicating with Townsend Public Affairs, our lobbyists at both the state and federal level, to see if we could make some headway, join with other cities to be able to make the plea for such assistance to be provided. The key here is, much like the previous item that was considered, is that when people fall through the safety net and they become displaced, that does create impacts to our city in terms of increased calls for service, additional homelessness, which impacts all of us. And so we are not yet aware of any funding that's been available to that regard. We are actively seeking such funds. And I also did want to mention that we did include information from a couple of other cities, and there may be more. These were the ones that were readily available to us that are also that have also put in place similar programs in order to try to prevent the risk of homelessness to the greatest extent possible. I'll also say that federal home funds can be used for tenant-based rental assistance. We do not have that program here in the city of Costa Mesa. It is something that we will be looking at going forward if we do receive at some point from the federal government additional home funds. But what we're recommending is something very similar to that, whereby families could receive a small monthly allowance of about $1,500 a month, and then which could be just enough to enable them to remain housed and to avoid being displaced.
Yeah, but that's why I'm looking at it and I'm thinking that's not going to help that many. I mean, I would like to be able to help more people. That's why I was wondering about the other funds. And also I haven't looked at our consolidated plan, I have to confess, but with the CDBG funds, some of that can be used for commercial purposes, and I'm wondering if maybe we might want to have what's his name, Mike, who does all our CDB.
Linares?
Yes, look into what we might do, because we may have some beautification projects or something, or who knows what we have in there, to help some of our commercial tenants as well. Or there may be something floating around, because I know there's a great need. So that's why I'm hoping that we can explore some other avenues to come up with additional funds.
Just to update you, Councilmember Guinness, the Phase 3 stimulus package that the Congress and the Senate are negotiating right now, it does include aid to small businesses, including no-interest loans that can convert to grants. It includes aid to local public agencies with flexibility to use to address various impacts, which this could be one. It includes paid leave reimbursement for public agencies, especially those that do not pay certain payroll taxes. Some other things that aren't relevant to this discussion right now. It also includes increased funding and flexibility to address the impacts of COVID-19 on the homeless. So that arguably could be used for this purpose as well. And increased funding and flexibility for CDBG. So that's right now currently being negotiated. So there are some other items that might benefit this.
So though the 250 isn't going to go real far, it might act as a bridge to get us through to when the stimulus package is finally negotiated.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Reynolds?
Yeah, Ms. Farrell Harrison, can you clarify, given the item we just passed, which protects against evictions, what gaps this proposal fills?
So what we've envisioned, thank you for asking that question. That's a great question, and we thought about that as well. And so the difference between this item and the previous item on the moratorium on evictions is this is a proactive step before we get to the point where a family might be evicted and then is in the position of owing 6 months or more of rent at the end of the moratorium. And so what we're trying to do is give an opportunity for people to have just enough to be able to pay their rent that's good for both landlords in terms of continuing a steady flow of income in order to pay their mortgages while still enabling the renters to stay in place. And so it is another tool in the toolbox that would enable us to address a need earlier on in the process before someone becomes at risk of eviction and then has to go through the process to prove that through COVID-19, they are now susceptible to being evicted and having to give that documentation to the landlord. This is a step that's preliminary, and before that ever happens, to avoid having to go through that process to begin with. And so in some ways, this measure is much more of a proactive strategy and one that also helps landlords because it keeps that cash flow coming.
Sure. Okay. So instead of delaying a payment, we're able to fill that gap, help fill that gap. Okay.
Right, in whole or in part.
Right. Okay. And I've seen, for example, United Way has started a new campaign to collect funding, I think, for similar support. Families First has been one of the our partner agencies in helping house families. How would this work with those and other kind of similar resources available separate from the city?
So I think it would be staff's interest is if you direct us to consider exploring it and bringing it back and working on this, we would definitely reach out to understand how we could do a public-private partnership on this, maximize city resources and or the disaster relief packages that are being considered, and also partnering with the private sector and any nonprofits that would be willing to partner with us on this.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez?
None. Thank you.
Councilmember Mara?
No questions.
Councilmember Mansour?
Thank you. So I appreciate the hardships that a lot of people are going through. I have a few questions about this and just concerned how it's going to be administered and the cost and whether there's fraud and so forth. So let me go through a couple of those. Just trying to think of where to start here for a second. I think this is, I know the focus of this is on renters, but the question comes up again, what about homeowners? And I know there could be federal assistance for that. But let me address my concerns about fraud. I know we have to, on this, the person has to either show they're somehow affected by coronavirus. Either they had the virus or they lost a job because of it. But what are we doing in terms of them showing their financial need? Do they need to show a bank statement? Do they need to show a tax return? How do we know they're not receiving reimbursement from the federal program or the federal reimbursement? Are they double dipping? There's just a lot of questions that come up. Are we going to be able to help businesses as well, or just renters? Or what about a business who is renting a location? So those types of questions come up. The other question is, will we even have the money for this? And I know Councilmember Guinness mentioned that. The staff report under fiscal review shows $250,000 from the general fund, but from where in the general fund? Is this going to come out of, is this going to reduce our fund balance? Is it going to reduce our emergency fund? To my knowledge, we've pretty much earmarked everything in our budget. There's no real surplus money. We have needs everywhere. So it's not magic money that just comes out of the general fund. We hope to get reimbursed, but I don't know that we will. You know, we can't really borrow the money. Our federal government does enough of that. The other financial question is under implementation. The staff report mentions that city staff could administer the program. We're short-staffed right now as it is. Many of our staff are working from home. If city staff could administer it, I think we need to say who is going to administer it. I think we need to be very specific. The staff report also says the city can contract with a provider, but there's nothing mentioned about who that provider could be or how much that would cost. And we are in a difficult financial situation as well as a city, so I think we need to take all of those things into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, so the questions he had was, what are you going to do to protect against fraud? How will we pay for the $250,000? What do we lose if we transfer $250,000? And then finally, what is the cost for a consultant to manage the program? Can you answer those questions? I'm just summarizing what he said as a comment, but turn it into questions.
Yes, thank you. And Councilmember Mansour, those are all very good questions and all things that we could explore and bring back to you for the consideration. Again, what we're asking here is to consider whether you'd like to direct us to look into this and to create such a program and bring it forth to you, and we would come back with all of these guidelines. In my mind, in terms of how this would work, it would work very similar to the federal home tenant-based rental assistance program that has very specific guidelines. It would be an expansion of that type of program, if you will, where there is very specific guidelines about who would be eligible, what the documentation is that would be required, all subject to future audit if needed. And then I would recommend that if it can fall within the city manager's office in concert with development services or a combination thereof. We do have staff that are right now off-site that are not as deployed, as you will, on the essential activities, and they have expressed interest and willingness to help with anything related to COVID-19. So I think we would be able to get additional bandwidth as it relates to that, and perhaps not require the efforts of a consultant. However, I would say that any consultant that's experienced with the TBRA program that's federally provided would be good in this regard. Mike Linares is probably going to be a good resource for us on this as well. And so we would be prepared to come back to you with specific recommendations, guidelines on how the program would be administered. I think the key here is the funding. Hopefully, there will be a stimulus package approved soon that will give more clarity as to the eligibility of funds, and we wouldn't need to have any general fund contribution. However, in the absence of that, we are recommending that that be something that could be considered, whether it's general fund with future reimbursement, or it's just getting some of the disaster relief funds directly. I cannot guarantee that if we move forward with the general fund, this would be reimbursed. However, we're hoping that through all of these disaster relief conversations, what's at the core of all of them at every level, especially at the federal level, is the impact to the economy and the impact to families. And so everyone's concerned about a recession. Everyone's concerned about unemployment claims. We're already seeing 500,000 unemployment claims in the state of California. I remember the Great Recession and those numbers, and we're getting very close to those numbers now, if not in some cases have exceeded them, and we're early on in this in this issue. So to the extent that we could keep people from plummeting through the safety net and requiring even more by way of services from every level of government, whether it's our healthcare system or calls for service that are going to impact us, and keeping folks housed, I think the better. And so we would come back to you with that information, but before we spent a lot of resources and time on exploring this option, we wanted to put it forward for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mansour, do you have anything else? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So I think that I really like the spirit of this. And I'd like the staff to go forward and pursue it. I guess I'm not quite sure how we came to 250,000. So that's question number one. And second question is, if the staff pursued this program, presented it to us, and we decided not to implement it, would the appropriation of 250,000 go away and go back to the general fund? And the third question is this: it appears to me, like I think some of the council members have said, that we've addressed by our prior vote rental protection at least through, at least for several months, it seems like. And did the staff consider providing other relief with this finite fund, whether it be 250 or something more or less, other than rental assistance, to assist people that are unemployed? For example, people that need to pay their utilities, people that need to pay for food, people that need to pay for supplies, other needs that they have. Why focus on rental assistance in light of our prior vote to go forward with an eviction moratorium and a mandatory restructuring program?
Ms. Farrell-Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Stevens. That's a great question. The eviction item is really one, it's not providing rental assistance. What that is providing is prevention of immediate homelessness due to inability to pay. This item is different in that it is preventing even getting to that circumstance where you would be potentially evicted. And even with the moratorium, there's still a debt that needs to be paid once the moratorium is lifted. And so this item is more about making sure that there's a cash flow for both the renter and also for the landlord in addition to that. And so it creates that flow. In the eviction scenario, the eviction moratorium scenario, one side of the transaction isn't receiving a flow of cash. They're not receiving the payment. What we're doing is preventing someone from being displaced, but we're not continuing for the flow of money to be able to be provided to one family, which will then be able to provide additional funding to the landlord in order to be able to pay for whatever other necessities the landlord may have. And so this item, if you will, has that double benefit in that it has an exponential, in terms of the investment, it has an additional benefit to both parties. And so it's continuing the sustenance at both levels of the transaction. The reason why we're not bringing forward other items is because the federal government is providing a lot of assistance as it relates to either food stamps for families that are now at the federal poverty level, regrettably, or below, and medical assistance and things like that will pay for medical bills through Medi-Cal, through food and other resources through WIC or CalFresh and general relief. And so through the other programs, there are other funds that can be used or other resources that can be used as it relates to food and other resources. The reason we're focusing on rent is because rent is the one thing that is found to be the direct correlation to homelessness. And so, in addition to our eviction item, we think that this is a good complement in that it keeps a family from incurring this large debt that would be owed once the moratorium is over. And it enables a family to stay consistent with its payments, get some funding to the landlord as well. There'll be other forms of relief for the other types of payments that the families will likely have to make. Rents are your single highest cost factor, and it's the one that we feel is the one that should be focused on in order to prevent homelessness from occurring, and providing, again, that flow to the landlord as well for the two-sided transaction benefits. Hope that answers your question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, there's a couple questions that I didn't get an answer to. Where'd you come up with the $250,000? And also, if we don't approve it, ultimately, does the $250,000 go back in the general plan? And then a third question I thought of is to address Councilmember Guinness's concern in the prior item. Could we structure the program so priority is given to people who are renting from landlords who have 3 or less rental properties?
So I'll start with the 250,000. There is no magic science or no real scientific basis for that number. It's just a number that we felt could be the bridge to getting additional disaster relief funds, to be honest. And so since some of these bills are in the works and have some degree of flexibility that could be used for this purpose, we were trying to come up with a figure that would give us that enough of a bridge fund, if you will. In terms of the Councilmember Guinness's recommendation, that's something that could definitely be considered in terms of guidelines that we could put forward in terms of what kinds of landlords and small rental units for consideration. And in fact, if the council would feel more comfortable, we could come back with a recommendation that just relates to disaster relief funds, but at least start putting together the backbone and the skeleton of a structure of a program that we could put together that could potentially be funded through disaster relief funds without a contribution from the general fund. And so I know that right now we're going through the next 3 months, a difficult time budgetarily with a lot of the businesses that have been shut down. And so this could be an effort that we undergo as it relates to disaster relief funds if they become available. That's another option. And so it's just something that we wanted to explore, to take a look at, see if there's a possibility to strengthen and shore up our resources to families in need, because there will be we have an opportunity to do something now related to a crisis that will have long-standing ramifications. And if we don't provide some basis of a safety net for the most vulnerable, there will be costs that will come to every level of government from that displacement and from families falling through that safety net that will far exceed this level of funding, if you will. Did I answer? Those were 2 questions.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, you did. It's just, and if we don't approve the program ultimately, then the 250 goes back to the general fund.
Well, it's not been taken out of the general fund.
No, I know, but it gets unrestricted. It's just unrestricted funds, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any questions at this time. Well, I do have one question. You said we don't have federal home funds. We used to have federal home funds. Do we not anymore?
No, we do have federal home funds. We don't have the TBRA program.
Oh, okay.
So typically you have to put that into your plan and needs to be approved by the federal government.
Okay.
And that is one of the eligible ways that you can use home. We don't have tenant-based rental assistance as one of the programs funded through home. But given my familiarity with that, I think we could adopt similar guidelines.
Okay. Okay. Open this item up for public comment. Did anybody send us an email?
No, they did not.
Okay. Close public comment, and I'll make a motion to direct staff to move forward in creating a disaster relief fund and program. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Reynolds, and I'm not going to dictate what all the parameters should be. I'm just going to give, based on this discussion that you heard tonight, come up with a disaster relief program, because I think that we're going to need something more than just rental assistance, and that might also help us to use funds that are not part of the general fund. So that's why I didn't include the $250,000. Okay. Well, Councilman Reynolds, did you want to speak to the motion?
Sure. Yeah, I really appreciate Ms. Farrell Harrison's descriptions of the possibility here and thinking forward. I think we've seen over the last several years the real cost of homelessness, and understand that it's much more cost effective for us to start trying to invest in preventing homelessness. And we know this is, we're going to have lots of challenges coming down the line. So I really appreciate taking time now to try to develop a program to mitigate that as much as possible. I would encourage, as Ms. Farrell Harrison, I think suggested, absolutely looking at existing models. I know she has experience with the TBRA programs, partnerships with other agencies who are doing similar work in our region, in really looking at how to best leverage existing funds and expected funds that may be coming out of all the legislation that's being discussed right now. It may be a little early for this, but let's also think about exploring, partnership or sponsorship from private agencies, any of our giant businesses who are going to be invested in Costa Mesa rebuilding. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Okay, Councilmember Guinness, did you have any comment?
I will be supporting the motion, and I would encourage staff to review some of our existing resources to possibly amend our consolidated plan or look at our action plan, maybe reallocate some of our CDBG money from some of the things that we've traditionally spent it on. And even we still have some money rattling around in an old RDA account, I think. And so not to be creative, not to limit our options. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Chavez?
I will support the motion.
Okay. Councilmember Marr?
Yeah, I'll support the motion as well. Connor Locke and I were on a call with the Small Business Development, SDBC. I can never figure out the C Center. That's it, SDBC. Earlier this week, and they're rolling out a program that has matching funds from Wells Fargo specifically targeted to small businesses, and looking to have cities pass ordinances with some matching funds out of the general fund. And so if we're looking for a larger disaster program, I think that should be incorporated, and I forwarded all of that information to the city manager earlier this week. So that in terms of Councilmember Reynolds' comment, I think there are businesses that are looking to step up in this time, and so being able to leverage those matching funds in particular would be very helpful. I would have supported the motion if we were passing exactly what is written for all of the reasons I stated previously regarding the need to help the most vulnerable. I think we can also target programs so that they're, to the question about fraud, I think we can also target programs so that they truly do serve the most vulnerable in the community. And that's what I would be looking to do on the rental side in particular, because not everyone, as the mayor mentioned, is going to be able to repay rent in 120 days. It doesn't matter how long you give them. They're just not going to be able to make up that amount of funding if they haven't had employment for a couple of months. So I think there's a lot we could be doing as a city. I think there's a lot of ways in which we need to rely on the federal government to pass some of the stimulus money, but let's do what we can here locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Mansour. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
I love the initiative of the staff and coming up with the staff report. And I like the motion that was put forward by the mayor even better in its simplicity and its breadth. And so I wholeheartedly support the motion.
Okay, call for the question by voice vote.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Yes.
Councilmember Marr.
Yes.
Councilmember Mansour. Councilmember Guinness.
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Yes.
Mayor Foley.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1. Councilmember Mansour voting no.
Okay. We have one more item of business. Thank you, everybody. We're almost done. Item number 6.
6 is removal of Tier 2 salary and benefit structure for communications officers and temporary suspension of the transparency policy.
So just so we're clear for the public, what is a communication officer? Dispatchers. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Nakamoto?
Okay, Nakamoto?
Madam Mayor, honorable council members, before you is staff recommendation to, 1, eliminate the Tier 2 salary and Tier 2 vacation accruals. This action is required immediately to assist our communications officers, AKA dispatchers, who provide imperative contributions and service to public safety response. The companion recommendation also is to suspend the transparency and labor negotiations in order for us to immediately effectuate this action. Staff is available to answer any questions.
Okay. We'll start with Councilmember Guinness. Any questions? Councilmember Guinness, are you still there? I'll move to Councilmember Reynolds, and then we'll go back to her. Councilmember Reynolds?
No question.
Okay. Councilmember Chavez?
None, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Marr?
No questions.
Councilmember Mansour? Questions? Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Councilmember Guinness, are you on the line?
Yeah, I forgot to unmute my phone.
Okay. Did you have any questions?
I have no questions. No questions.
Okay. I have no questions. We'll open this item up for public comment. Did we receive any public comments?
No, we have not.
Okay. Close the public comment. Council, is there a motion?
Move the item.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Chavez, second by Guinness. Call for the question with the voice vote.
Councilmember Reynolds?
Yes.
Councilmember Marr?
Yes.
Councilmember Mansour?
Yes.
Councilmember Guinness?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Foley?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. That's our last item of business. Council members, if there's any other additional reports, comments, or suggestions, I'm just going to go through the list. Councilmember Guinness, anything else?
The only thing I wanted to remind you to clean your shoes, too, when you come in.
Thank you.
The soles of your shoes will pick up stuff, too.
Good suggestion. Councilmember Reynolds?
I'll just encourage the public to keep reaching out to us with any questions or suggestions. It's really helpful for us to know how to share information with staff as well, and how to position as we navigate this new situation together. And thank you to all of our staff for all of your hard work.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes. Unless you need to go out, stay home. It's really imperative for us to protect one another. So unless you need to go out, please stay home.
Councilmember Marr?
I just have a comment for Councilmember Mansour. If you think that talking to empty council chambers is awkward, try talking to your living room with only your dog listening to talk about evictions.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
She's just commenting on how she's at home and she's talking to her dog in the living room, and that's awkward too, just like just talking to the audience here. Yeah. Yeah. Councilmember Mansour, anything else?
A couple things. One, if people email the city, please copy the city clerk. That way she has it in the public record. We all get your emails, but she needs them too. You know, I'll just say these are very difficult times, and you know, we disagree up here. We all have our reasons, but I'll just say my thoughts and prayers are with everyone in our community, and we're praying and hoping that this will be over soon. And we appreciate everyone's patience and coming together and working as a community on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Yes, I just want to say that I thank the staff. You guys are doing a terrific job, every single one of you. And as for the council, I appreciate the engagement and the work that you're doing too. The video turned out awesome. You guys all looked great and sounded great. And we're in this together. And as Councilmember Mansour mentioned, we're not always going to agree. We're making the points that we think are right. We own our votes, and we're going to move forward together, and we'll get through this as a community. So God bless you all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'll echo those same sentiments, and I want to just again thank our city team, everything you all are doing to navigate through this incredibly difficult process, which is uncertain and unpredictable, and sometimes, almost all the time, out of our control. And so thank you all for that. Thank you for sanitizing the dais up here so that we can be safe. And please do sanitize again. And everyone, my message is just simply, please stay home. I'm like a mantra, please stay home. It's so important. We have to stop the spread. We need your help. The best way you can help is by staying home. So thank you so much. For more information about what's happening every day in the city of Costa Mesa, please go to our city website, and there's a new tab that's called COVID-19, and you can get updates regarding the what we're doing every day on that page. So thank you all, and good night.
Night.
Thank you.